Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the final board meeting for IAWAI for the establishment phase. We go live on the 1st of July, and the next board meeting will obviously be dealing with a lot of business as usual, as well as setup processes that we've been dealing with over the last year. We'll also be joined by three new outstanding board members in Hinarangi, Jennifer and Tim, and look forward to that. We've got a Kufri, I think, on the 1st of July. So that should be big. We do have some representations from the public today. And as a result of that, I've agreed with Natasha to change the order of the agenda so that after the public representations, the public forum, we're going to do the Southern Wastewater Treatment Plant reports. That allows residents who want to go to leave at that point, but if they want to stay, they're very much welcome to stay for the rest of the public board. So if we go through the agenda, we're going to start with an opening karakia. Tim?
No, tēnā tātou. Nau mai, whakatau mai. Ko IAWAI. Ki me tuatai ki tātou e nana inga mea katoa. Ire hau, pai māri. Ki me, ki ngā mate, ki motu, haere, ki pō. Ki me, te whānau pani o te kuia, pane kuhu, ki te tangihana ina nahi, o te kuia o Tūranga Wāwai. Te ringa raupa o te kauta o Tūranga Wāwai, te hoa rangatira o Liau, te kaitiaki o ngā wakatawa o te kingitanga. E te kuia, haere. Me kia rete ngā maniwhiri rā, me ngā hāpuri o nuku hau, nau mai, au mai, kia rete. Engari, te kia o tātou hu, te kare kia tātou. Mā tātou tātou hau, te wari mea, roi ki tātou he mangaro, kāra pai ki ngā hana, kato. E ngā wako o tākere nuku, tākere rangi, tākere wai, tū te wini, tū te wana, ani ire, mauri tau, kumai te hi, kumai te hana, whanno, hana mai te toki, haumie, huie.
Thank you. In terms of the minutes, can we confirm the minutes? Are there any issues that people wish to raise with the minutes? We've got a big agenda to do, so it would be helpful to.
They look good.
Yeah, good. So we can confirm the minutes in that case. Are there any? We've got the interest register attached in the papers. Are there any additional declarations or conflicts?
No.
Tim? And not from me either. Which brings us on to Peter's report. I wondered whether, do you want to say your piece, Peter? Do you want to, no, we're going to deal with the, sorry. We're going to deal with the public forum, then the Southern Wastewater Treatment Plant, then we'll cover Peter's report. It's, yeah, we changed the order. Okay, over to the public forum. I think, Roy, you're going to be first, and then we've got Chris afterwards. I think you're aware of that. It's up to 10 minutes. It's about right then, isn't it? So over to you. Thank you.
It was so quiet, I thought I was coming to church.
We'll pray later.
Kia ora, my name is Ra Pudidi, and I live in Raglan. And thanks for the opportunity to share with you today. I'm a plumber by trade. Worked in the plumbing industry for most of my life. My father was a plumber, mostly in the USA and around the world. For the past 20 years, I've been involved with a software company that trains mechanical engineers to use intelligent design software to design wastewater treatment plants, data centers, hospitals, industrial complexes, and large buildings. I literally have had my hands in other people's toilets my entire life. Do you know where the Raglan wastewater discharge pipe is physically located? Most people assume that it is a deep water ocean outfall, somewhere out beyond the bar and the surf, away from people. It's not. The discharge point sits directly in the middle of one of the most heavily used recreational areas in Raglan. It is the primary kite surfing beach. Families swim there daily. It's one of the most accessible beaches in town. You can park right next to it, walk straight into the water at most tides. No rocks, no barriers. It's exactly the kind of place where you want to take your family. On a regular basis, people in the water are unknowingly, I underline in bold, unknowingly, swimming in a mixed soup of treated effluent and seawater. The concentration changes constantly, depending on the tide, the volume being pumped from the pipe, and conditions on the day. There is no warning, no notification, no alert, no real-time signal of any kind to tell the public the pump is running. There are what I call, and this is my term, liability deflection signs that most people do not see. In 2022, my daughter sent me a short video. It's in the middle of the summer, in the afternoon, a video of the water bubbling close to where my grandchildren and the dog were playing. She asked me, "What is this, Dad?" I knew immediately. The effluent pipe had switched on. It's designed to switch on after the turn of the tide. The water was bubbling just a few meters from where my grandchildren and their dog were playing. I called her straight away. I told her to get the kids out of the water, take them home, throw them in the shower, wash their clothes, wash the dog. I'm sure you can understand why. I have a feeling you would all do the same thing. She had no idea. She was upset and very angry. She thought the bubbling water was something cool or interesting that she'd take a photo of because of my plumbing brain. This is one of the reasons this is very personal to me. Shortly after this, I met on site with some council and water care employees. While families were actively swimming near the discharge pipe, again, summer, afternoon, beautiful day, I asked them directly, would you bring your family here and swim around the pipe to demonstrate to the public that it was safe? I'm paraphrasing, it's not exactly what I said, but I said something to that effect. With some hesitation, they were honest, I believe, because they're good men. They said no, they would not swim there. They would not bring their families. One of them used an analogy that I'll never forget. He asked, do you know what happens when you pull the plug from a bathtub? You know, there's some people that don't know what that is because they've taken showers all their lives. It's quite funny. So some people don't know what happens when you pull the plug out of a bathtub. The rings, the dirt remains on the sides of the bathtub. And so what was he really saying? In my opinion, my humble opinion, he was saying no. And he was being honest. I would not bring my family here because it's polluted. I don't want my family to take the risk of getting sick. Later, Watercare's written response to my Lagoima request stated that the employee's reason for declining and saying he wouldn't swim there was something to do with the tides and strong currents, not the water quality. My invitation was never to swim in dangerous conditions. I specifically invited council members after that, Watercare employees, staff, the CEO, elected representatives to come at low tide when the pump typically runs as the tide turns and stand on the pipe and jump into the water. My grandchildren were doing that. So I wasn't asking to do something that my own family had already done. It had nothing to do with strong currents. On a daily basis, our community and visitors are exposed to this health risk. The show us its safe invitation remains open to anyone on this board. From July the 1st, 2026, the right is coming, this is the last board meeting. I didn't know that prior to that date. The right for the public to make informed health and safety choices falls to this board. So that's why I appreciate this opportunity. Employees of Watercare and the council can choose not to swim near the pipe. They have information the public does not. All I'm asking is that the public be given the same ability to make an informed choice through a local app or a website, Facebook. All of the real-time notification options have little to no cost, zero cost. The technology exists, but for some unknown reason, the willingness to follow the golden rule does not. Do people not have the right to decide for themselves whether they want to swim near an active discharge point? I believe they do. And right now they cannot make that decision or choice because they do not know when the pump is on. So I'm here today with a straightforward request. Will this board consider to commit to real-time public notification of wastewater discharges, beginning in Raglan and as a standard across the entire network at every discharge location in Hamilton and across the Waikato district? Will you include in that commitment in the water service strategy document that's currently evolving? In my humble opinion, this is a daily public health issue, daily. It is a transparency issue. It's about giving the public the same rights to an informed choice that council and water care employees have always enjoyed. It's not a technical issue. I know it's not a technical issue. It's not we don't have the budget for that issue. It's a good Samaritan issue. It's a do unto others as you would have them do unto you issue. It's simply an issue of the heart. Do we care enough about each other to do hard things? I know this is hard. I know it's historical and there's lots of issues. I know it's not easy. Do we have enough care for each other, for strangers, for visitors from other countries to do the right thing? And it is, in my opinion, I believe, a very simple issue to fix. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Ra, for a thoughtful and powerful society. Are there any, so this is a public forum, it's not a debating session. Are there any questions for Ra from the other board members?
Thank you, on behalf of Laura, your concerns. And it's always good for us to hear directly from our people, from our community. And I'm sure, I think from the board, it's great to be able to hear the issues that we don't consider. And we'll go away and consider the best.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ra. Thank you. So Dr. Chris Hickey now is going to represent the residents group who are affected by, thank you, who are affected by the proposal for the Southern Wastewater Treatment Plant. What do you think?
Turn the timer on, so I'm on my 10 minutes. By way of introduction, Chris Hickey. I worked for NIWA for over 40 years until 2019. I then joined RMA Science. My background's water quality, environmental chemistry, toxicology. I was involved with the risk study in 2010 with the Waikato River. I've been involved with reconsenting lots of the discharges into the river from contact right through the Huntly Power Station. And I've also been involved with the drinking water supplies and risk publications from the Ministry of Health and things like that. So what I'm back to you today about is, I'm not going to talk about what I planned to do today, which was talk about resilience, risk and consequences and move it into the river. I have had to change this back a bit again and give you a recap about what you're proposing here relative to the Southern Wastewater Treatment Plant, because it has very big consequences for both Hamilton and long-term issues in relation to the IAWAI and the nature of the discharge. So I've got a little presentation here, a couple of background slides. This is the from last time, just as a recap, because there's some new board members here. The site that we're site, which is called Site 1 on Rains Road, which is the yellow coloured one here, is surrounded by a large rural residential population. A lot of those take groundwater downstream. The original proposal had discharge to the Nukuhau stream and then ultimately to the river. And I think things subsequently changed from our presentation we got the other day, but I'm just highlighting the nature of that site. All right, Natasha, the next slide, please. Just moving on. Back in February, some more than 4 months ago now, we proposed an alternate site that had a sort of similar footprint. It was called Site 3 before in one of your original assessments. But what it sort of failed on was it didn't have enough land. So we went to the landowner and we said, how could we tidally put this in? And this site is much closer to the industrial side of things. The phase 1 of this proposal wanted to do to treat wastewater from the airport and potentially have land disposal. And it had ticked the boxes for land disposal options there. Now the red bit of text there in the middle for the disposal options, seemingly that changed in our presentation a couple of days ago. It's been discounted now that you need land disposal, and it's been discounted any discharge to the Nukuhau stream. So the baseline has changed somewhat. Natasha, the next one. Right. So this is just giving you an assessment timeline here to come back. I've given you a bit of a recap of some of the things I touched base with in 27th February in the presentation. And then what we proposed there was a like-for-like assessment. So we proposed we've given you some more land and just to ask for an initial reassessment with the criteria that we used, the multi-criteria assessment system. There's 23 of those. And that's done by Becca, and you've got Garrett here along here today who knows all about that. Basically, there's also an unknown cultural assessment framework sitting on top of that, which was 50% of the weighting, and I can say we don't know any more about that now. So what's happened then, we expected that to be largely a spreadsheet exercise, not to come up with a 72-page report that we've waited 4 months to see and got told about 3 days ago before this meeting. All right. So we figured that we'd have a quick assessment of those sites and then just a clear weighting, and I'll come on to show you how we thought that would work. The meeting we came to the other day was we learned nothing more about the iwi scoring system, but that's just where it goes. So we don't know about the other 50% of the system other than what I've quoted there at the bottom saying it's basically they've just still gone for Site 1 still, even though that goes potentially right past the Nukuhau Power and at least doesn't go down the stream anymore. But I'll come back to that. So we basically, I've highlighted and read at the bottom, we've had no reasonable opportunity to provide input to this scoring system and review the speaker report, which has really quite major consequences. And I will just move on to my next slide, which won't take too long, but this is sort of some of the things we were looking for in there. And I'll just say I haven't had time to go and look. The top scoring here was one of the scenario, I think it was called scenario 4. I apologize if I haven't gone and double checked. This was from the 2024 presentation. Now, this is the multi-criteria system has a weighting on it. If you change the weighting, you get different answers. And if you favour environmental things, that's what scenario 4 was doing. And I'm just highlighting here that the Rains Road site, if you just pair some of these for ecology and some of these matters, and in terms of potential archaeological issues and things, you get a lot better score for the Pennicut Road site that we've come to. Okay, so we came into this is our expectation that what a reassessment would do, and that it would include a more environmental aspect. So this is not really the environment from the consequences of the IAWAI. This is just the multi-criteria assessment that's being done for how the engineers like to do it and what the site's like and what the people are like around it. Okay, so just might note, we'll stay on this one. 2026, 3 days ago, I'm just reproducing here, and sorry, Gareth, I didn't copy your strengths and weaknesses slide here exactly, but this is the best recollection we have. So we've got some strengths and weaknesses for the two sites, Site X and our strength, Site 1. And basically, as best I can tell in their report, there's no reassessment for this high environmental score weighting like I've reproduced above. And there's some strengths for this Site X that we've got, and there's a number of weaknesses. And I basically highlighted the weakness at the bottom, which is just highlighting again the significant odour and noise concerns due to the proximity of residential properties at our Site X. Okay. Now, this is partly or largely one of the reasons we came into this with Site 1, because of all those residential properties around there. And lots of these industrial sites produce this low humming, persistent background noise. Even you can modify them, but it just comes through. The busy paper works down at the industrial site, at the airport, produces this low hum that just penetrates straight through buildings. But this was part of the reason we suggested Site X. Here's an industrial site. You'd shift your wastewater treatment plant to the industrial site. Okay. So we're reiterating this because it makes a very big decision for you guys for the future and healthy environment. Next slide, please. So this is what I'm coming to, is that where we're at the moment. These are my proposal things. I need to. This is double printing over that slide.
Oh gosh.
Oh, there it is. It was thinking. Sorry, I need a new computer up there. We'd ask you to delay the final decision on Site 1 and Site X, and I've got a number of reasons here. And the number one is that we'd like a reasonable opportunity to respond to this. As I said, I was going to bring to this some resilience, risk, and consequences for the IAWAI today, but I can't talk about that. We'd also see there's other information that was given at this meeting the other day that talks about Haverdale discharge site and Low Road. What we're talking about for design here, and Garrett can correct me, he said we're talking about 37,000 tonnes of wastewater discharge going out over the Gambian basket and into the IAWAI at the end of the road. So that's quite a range of contaminants that aren't going into the IAWAI at the moment that you're now putting in there, and they're going to go down that left bank of the river and just run round down that side. So there's major discharge issues to come. We're not even talking about it. But they're bringing a range of contaminants, and that's why I was going to talk about things like the pharmaceuticals that I've done research work on, as well as cocaine and MDMA that we know are coming in there. And we know there's only a reasonable efficiency of removal. So you've got 37,000 tonnes a day going into this wastewater with only a certain percentage. Even if you take out 90% of these, you're putting a lot of these upstream of your water treatment. So what we'd also ask is that you engage with the landowner there. And we asked this in 2000, and it feels like it's going back that far, in February. So we brought the landowner along the other night to this meeting, but there was no opportunity for him to engage. Now they own 2,000 hectares of land there that runs 2 kilometres from down Pennicut Road to the railway line there. They're operating an industrial sandpit operation. They're very amenable to it. We could have shifted that site. We just proposed one on the, that was nice on the side of the Straight Highway. We could have just upped and shifted it to the other side there. They're very keen on this. They offer the opportunity for constructed wetlands. Actually land treatment things have multiple barriers for the discharge before it gets in the river. So we've actually sent you a formal letter, and that's my last point here today. I'm hopefully almost on time. Yes, I'm probably finished. Requesting this and a number of reasons there, and we feel the communication pathway here in this period since February has been very poor, and there's been no engagement with the landowner to request other options and things like that. But it's a very minimal site. So, willing to ask questions.
How are we doing for questions? We've just done the 10 minutes, but we are going to move into a discussion now on the. So, thank you very much for, as always, a very thoughtful presentation, Chris. And appreciate there was a meeting on Monday evening. I think it was it? So this week.
It was.
Yeah.
Which is the reason for the request.
Yeah. And thank you for the letter from the residents group as well. I think that brings the public forum to a close, but our next item is the Southern Wastewater Treatment Plant. The board have read the papers. Peter or Jackie, who's going to do an introduction and then you open it up for discussion?
I'll just briefly kick off and then pass on. The key things for me to highlight, I suppose, are the significant amount of work that's gone into be doing a like-for-like consideration of site X in comparison to the previous evaluation and an approach that took seriously how we would compare that site with the others on the same basis as was previously done. And secondly, I suppose a note that over time and the framework and some of the drivers of the need for a southern wastewater plant will shift and change as the pattern of growth and development changes. So part of that is beyond the like consideration, the reality of the growth that we now face and where it is happening and what that means in terms of the likely first stage of a southern wastewater treatment plant. There's been a considerable team involved in making this happen and that work. And I suppose the last thing by way of introduction for me to say is, the recommendations that are in front of the board this morning are not the same thing as saying go and build a wastewater treatment plant on Rains Road tomorrow. They are a step in the process, and the next round of work to investigate further the shortlisted discharge options is what would then follow. So there is a lot of work to go before the board would be in a final decision to actually proceed on that site with that by way of introduction, I'll pass to Jackie.
Morena koutou. And firstly, just want to acknowledge the representatives of the Nuka Residents Group here today. Kia ora. I thought because this is a significant paper, Mr. Chair, I thought I might just highlight some of the key points. So this paper is really about unlocking delivery of design investigations, consenting, planning approvals and plant upgrades across all of IAWAI, the metro area and the Southern Wastewater Treatment Plant. As Peter's mentioned, it represents years of joint work to find more resilient and growth enabling wastewater servicing solutions for the metro area. And the recommendations are really seeking to move from the strategy that was developed between 2018 and 2022 between the three councils, Waikato, Taranui and Mana Whenua, into a place of implementation. So in 2018 and 22, a detailed business case was developed to look at servicing solutions for the full metro area. And through that work, a roadmap of investment was developed and agreed by those partners. a core principle to that program is the lifting of wastewater treatment standards to be consistent across the metro area. So the first recommendation in the paper is really seeking the adoption of minimum wastewater treatment standards as set out in the Memorandum of Understanding that was signed by the three councils in Waikato Tainui in 2023 across the full IAWAI jurisdiction. Just to give a bit of context on that recommendation, as you're already aware, the Water Services Strategy does provide for achieving these standards at the plants that are programmed to be upgraded within the next 10-year period, including the Pukete plant. Waikato District have recently awarded a contract for Ngāroa Wahia, Rāhui Pōkeka and Te Kauwhata based on achieving those standards. The standards are the same as what has been adopted in recently upgraded plants across the Waikato and Waipa District, including the Cambridge Wastewater Treatment Plant. And achieving those standards has really formed the base for all of our investigations for the Southern Wastewater Treatment Plant. So it's a significant decision for the board to make, but one that will allow the implementation teams to just continue and get on with the work that needs to occur. One of the key drivers for the Southern Wastewater Treatment Plant is relieving some of the pressure on the Pukete Wastewater Treatment Plant and the network that conveys flows from the south to Pukete. It also seeks to provide a boundaryless approach to wastewater servicing across the full metro area, something that's often been talked about over the last 20 years, but it's never actually been done. So included in the paper are land use and growth assumptions for the full metro area. And the reason for presenting those together is because what gets diverted south has an impact on what will be needed at Pukete. Also, the detailed business case is based on staged diversion of the northern communities, so Taupiri, Ngaruahia, Horotiu and Te Kōwhai into Pukete over time. So included in the paper are those land use and growth assumptions that we're looking for to be adopted. There is a deeper dive into the assumptions that we want to apply to the proposed Southern Wastewater Treatment Plant. We have taken a long-term view of what might be required in the south, and that's really to inform master planning. Given that we are looking at a greenfields plant, it's important that we have the long-term future in mind as teams look at how we might lay out a wastewater treatment plant. Coming closer to now, though, we do need to look at making sure that we don't overinvest and that the plant infrastructure meets demand as it's expected to occur. So we have come closer and looked at what might be needed in the next 10 to 15 years, and then what might be needed in the next 35 to 50 years to inform both the investments and the consenting process. So those things are there. Peter's talked about the approach that's been taken to assessing potential sites for the Southern Wastewater Treatment Plant. That work started in earnest around the detailed business case. That work looked at a very large area and general areas of suitability and unsuitability to locate that plant. More recently, from about 2022, we have done closer, more site-specific investigations on 4 shortlisted sites. 2 parallel processes have been undertaken to assess those sites. On one hand, and Garrett's probably introduced himself, we have Garrett from Becker here. The Becker team have been the lead consultant looking at the technical, engineering, science and planning assessments in the MCA that's gone to support this work. In parallel with that, we have a dedicated kaitiaki rōpū who have undertaken their own cultural assessment. There is no weighting that's been applied to those 2 parallel pieces of work. They've simply occurred at the same time using different methodologies and different criteria and approaches. Through that work, 2, short listed sites were identified. The Rains Road site, which we're recommending for confirmation today, and another site, the Rukuhia site. More investigations were done on each of those sites to look at them more closely, and a result of both the MCA work that Garrett and his team have undertaken and the Kaitiaki-Rōpu's assessment, the Rains Road site was identified as the preferred site. That assessment did not factor in the fact that Hamilton City purchased the Site 1 Rains Road site in 2022. So the fact that we have ownership of that land was not considered in the assessment. Coming to February this year and the alternative site that was presented for consideration, as requested, we undertook a like-for-like comparative assessment of that site against the 4 sites that have previously been evaluated. And that like-for-like assessment used all the same criteria that were used in the 2022 to 2024 assessment, even though some of those design parameters have changed. Through that work, under no scenario that was tested did Site X, the alternative site, outrank the previously 2 shortlisted sites, and there's daylight between them. Some of the reasons for different weightings or different assessments, on the Site X site compared to the previous Site 3 site was the addition of that land, and Garrett can speak to this if you have any detailed questions, did introduce some features that didn't exist previously. They include a stand of mature trees right in the middle of the alternative site that would need to be cleared out in order to build a plant. So that affected the ecology assessment for that site. And one of the key weaknesses of Site X from the assessment is the proximity between the site and the enclave of between 20 and 25 houses directly across the road, and the inability to provide appropriate buffers between the plant and those residents. So following the Site X assessment, we have produced a report which is included in the paper, and that was really to demonstrate that it was done in a completely like-for-like manner by the same people using the same methodology and with the same level of care as the previous assessments. What we've also been doing over the last 12 months is looking at potential options for treated wastewater re-entry into the environment. And the reason we're trying to change our vocabulary around treated wastewater re-entry as opposed to discharge is to reflect the step change in treatment quality that these plants will be producing. So we know that when we talk about discharge, people immediately, have images of pipes and poorly treated waste pouring into the environment. That is not what we're talking about for the existing plants that are being upgraded, and it's not what we're talking about for the new plant. Through the assessment, there was a long list that was considered. That long list did include full land discharge. It did include rapid infiltration, potential re-entry back into tributaries to the main stem of the Waikato River, including the Nukuho stream, and options for re-entry closer to the main stem of the river. Similar to the site selection work, 2 parallel assessments were undertaken, one led by, again, the Becker team, looking at a different set of criteria, but adopting an MCA approach, and a similar cultural assessment undertaken by the Kaitiaki-Rōpu. Through that work, a re-entry back into the Waikato River has been identified as the preferred re-entry environment. What that looks like, though, is something that still needs to be worked through. The Kaitiaki-Rōpu have been very clear that there are, besides the level of wastewater quality that will be produced by the plant, there are other considerations that are important to them that would need to be factored into the design, location, form and function of any re-entry structures or environments. So there's still some work to do there. To support the work that was done to identify that preferred re-entry environment, we did look at potential locations that this might occur. So again, the Becker team and the Kaitiaki-Rōpu have undertaken a number of site investigations, site visits and evaluations to assess potential locations. And in the paper today, we're seeking approval for a shortlist of 3 potential re-entry locations. Identifying those locations did include the ability to access the land. So they largely follow either existing legal roads or paper roads in order to get to, or get close to the Waikato River. And then finally, the recommendation around the consenting pathway that we're putting forward to you is to utilise the Fast Track Approvals Act process. And I do have Lachlan here, who can speak to any questions that you have on this, this recommendation. But this type of project fits perfectly with the purpose of the Fast Track Approvals Act, which is really to support strategically important infrastructure and development. It also, in our view, provides a much more efficient process, given that there would be multiple regulators and different processes that we would need to follow otherwise. So sorry, long overview of the paper. I know you've read it, but I think they're big decisions and it was important just to step through them.
Could I say a few words and then throw it over to the board? But we have got Garrett and Lachlan here as well, who can answer any points on the work that Becca have undertaken and the legal aspects. And thank you for a comprehensive introduction. I think it is appropriate given the scale of the project and the strategic importance of it. What I liked about the report was the way it handled the macro issues around Hamilton and Waikato District and the micro issues around this site and the various options that were considered. I just want to be really clear and really underline what Peter said in his comments at the beginning. This is not the final decision. This is a point in time where we are being asked to consider the preferred location. There's a hell of a lot of work still to do, including where it outflows, and a whole load of other things that are needed for the consenting process. So I would hope that throughout, in other words, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and throughout that marathon, we just need to have regular engagement with the residents group so that we keep in touch, and at each stage in the journey, we talk to them about the proposals going forward. So just to be clear though, it is not the final decision today. Where it's a point in time where we're being asked to support preferred location at this point in time. That could change depending on the nature of that work going forward. And I guess the other thing I want to say is originally I think we were going to come to this board in April and then May. We did delay that consideration and we did ask Becca to do further work on the site side because we took the proposal from the residents very seriously. And as a measure of that, we as a board actually went out on site and visited site X plus the other sites that were considered. So we felt it was important that as board members, we needed to do that, given the what was a serious proposal from the residents group, but also a really important, a big amount of money for the water entity and a strategic issue for Hamilton, Waikato, and part of Waikato really going forward. So I just wanted to say that and open it up to Dave and Tim.
Well, first and foremost, just reaffirming to see Kevin was the board who wholeheartedly agreed and endorsed for the consideration of the residents' consideration of sightings and board wanted to ensure that process follow the same track as the others. And I can recall we made that statement to our staff to make that a priority in terms of that assessment. Hence the reason why a lot of effort was placed into that piece of work for that assessment. So I really just wanted to say that firstly. In terms of lifting wastewater standards across the river, I think that's something which not just Kaitiaki or we want, but also the wider community wants, particularly our river users. They want to lift it, lift those standards, not just in some wastewater, but across the whole region. And the Kaitiaki Rōpū Wells, they have been doing a lot of work in that southern wastewater treatment plant. They've actually been doing a lot of work across all those treatment plants. So I believe they'll be quite consistent, Jackie, in terms of their approach to the work that they're doing on the southern wastewater. So I just wanted to say that as well. In terms of the this is the last track alignment. In the pathway that it's east of Rockland. Maybe you could just touch on some of the reasons, key reasons why this project.
And also just to add to that, what the timing is likely to be in terms of preparation and then for the consent process itself.
Well, yes, thank you, Tim. Thank you.
And by the way, congratulations for wearing it. Very good choice of colour.
Yeah, we got the memo. Yeah, did notice that. Yeah, the first thing I would say is that is just endorsing the point that Jackie made, which is that this project is absolutely aligned with the legislative purpose of the Fast Track Approvals Act, which is to enable infrastructure development, which has a strategic importance both regionally and nationally. So, you know, in terms of the Southern Wastewater Treatment Plant, you probably couldn't find a project which is more squarely within the purpose of the Fast Track Act. So, it sits very comfortably in that setting. The other point is that, as Jackie again mentioned, is that there will be multiple approvals and consents, both at a district and at a regional level, and potentially other consents that will be required for this project. And the Fast Track Approvals Act brings all of those consenting processes together under one single streamlined process, so that all of the approvals are secured at one time, whether it be designation, discharge consents, resource consents, and anything else. So it's an efficient process that brings all of the issues into one place at one time and gets dealt with in an integrated way. So there's benefits for everyone in that approach. In terms of the timing, you know, despite the name of the Act, yes, it's faster than the Resource Management Act, but it's not unduly fast in the sense that things happen rapidly and without stakeholders having involvement and appreciation of what's going on. So the first thing that needs to happen in the case of the Southern Wastewater Treatment Plant is that the project would need to be the subject of a referral application, which would require a sort of consolidated set of technical material, which is put before the minister, really to justify that first threshold question of regional significance, which in this case I have absolutely no hesitation in saying you're going to meet that threshold. Then once it's referred, you then have in your own time the opportunity to then formulate the substantive application, which then gets lodged. It's checked for completeness by the ministry, and then it's referred to an independent panel, where it's then fully considered by a panel, which involves comments from parties who are identified as having status and can participate. The reality is that as we sit here today, that process leading up to a panel decision could be 18 months to 2 years at least. So fast relative to the Resource Management Act potentially, but still those are the kinds of timeframes we're looking at.
Just to follow on from that, based on the decisions today, the team will either re-baseline the existing program or not. And the current program, assuming a fast track process, is to seek lodgement of the referral in February, and then lodgement of the applications in early 2028.
So, and it could be a further year on, plus on top of that.
Yeah, once the substantive application is lodged
Yeah.
and passed on to a panel, once the panel is constituted, then it's fast.
Yeah.
It moves quickly at that point.
Yeah.
But the lead up to
A
that
lot of time.
is a lot of time.
And a lot of work. Okay. Thank you, Lachlan. Davis, do you have any observations or comments? Or
Yeah, I do. And my apologies for, I was just giving Peter, and I think Peter gave Jackie a bit of a heads up. I did come, as always, with quite some notes, and I thought I was good, but actually I got reason to pause. So let me walk through that. And if I can just acknowledge the residents first, and actually Raz before that about Raglan. So there's some things to think about. And I think for IAWAI, as we officially start, I suppose on 1 July, how we actually engage with the community in meaningful ways and timely ways. It's this is a bit of a test for that. I do, and that was already in my notes. I did wish someone else had actually made this decision prior to us, but they hadn't. So, and in due course, we will need to make decisions in the absence of others, perhaps kicking the can down the road, because as we've worked through over the last 11 and a half months, how the Waikato district of Hamilton City being the fastest growing part of New Zealand, and Hamilton only has one wastewater treatment plant and one potable water treatment plant is like an enormous risk if something happens. Well, then actually there is no plan B, and in due course, 40, 50 years, that will be no good. And as we've seen this calendar year, Moa Point, it might be no good sooner rather than later, depending on what actually happens. So, I'm convinced there's a need. I think the strategy to take IAWAI and look across IAWAI as opposed to just Hamilton City and Waikato District as independent is right. We've seen that in our water services strategy. The team have been able to come up with lower charges than would otherwise have been. So not lower charges necessarily, but than otherwise have been. And to identify the process to identify a site is a balance. Just a couple of thoughts from what you said, Jackie, about residents and buffers in Site X. There's residents in Range Road too, and I know you know that. Haven't been to Range Road only twice myself, but unfortunately, I don't think any of the sites we've looked at are completely away from everything. So you go, yeah, the city might grow towards us, and 2 weeks ago I was at the Palmerston North wastewater treatment plant, which was on the edge of town, but now there are residents that have built, and you might go, well, they've come after the wastewater treatment plant. Fortunately, we've got a different sequence of things for the sites. And Chris, thank you for your presentation. Let's say from myself, I know the chair's already thanked you, but thank you for bringing that forward. And particularly the note I made was around white noise from the plant, and that's a, that definitely is along with everything else, a great point. So. I didn't actually have some questions then, Kevin, but I definitely wanted to get that off my chest. I feel slightly better about doing that. But if it's okay, if I take the recommendations in reverse order, fast track, I think that makes sense, because if there's something that IAWAI can do when a decision is made that reduces costs, because everything we do that costs money, we have to recoup from the residents and the commercial people. So yeah. I'm in favour of that. I'm in favour of the of A, which is the treatment standards. I think we have to increase the treatment standards. D and E, which is Waikato River, the land, and some of the work done previously. If people don't know, interesting, Ra raised Water Care Chief Executive. I think when he wrote, I was the Water Care Chief Executive. I do not recall receiving that invitation from Ra. I do recall quite a few conversations with Ra, and actually when Water Care got some of the Keith will remember when perhaps the programming, which was reasonably manual, of of the discharge, and to cover that, and I know right to Ra, I'm pretty sure Raglan's going to land discharge from the estuary discharge for all the reasons he actually raised. So I'm sure we'll apply that. But for Raglan is much smaller than Hamilton, when Hamilton's growing. So land, and having seen in other places where you then encourage areas where there are avian bird life, particularly Huntley, when I visited the Huntley plant a few years ago, actually the quality of discharge to the river is worse once you have than when it actually leaves the plant. So, you know, if you encourage something, you get the avian bird life and everything else. By the time it actually does go somewhere else, the quality has diminished. So the one that's causing me pause that I was talking to Peter about is C, the raised road, and I know we're being asked for a decision. I take the point from the residents group that it was only Monday or perhaps Tuesday that they saw it and haven't had a lot of time. So what I was whispering to Peter about was going, I quite like point C. At some point, we're going to make a decision, but whether it's raised road plus site X is looked at for further engagement before we get to detailed design, because I think it would be a waste of money to do detailed design on 2 sites. You know, but the Residents Association has given me pause to go, we haven't had a chance to properly engage with well, not properly, but to engage in a different way with the landowner, and taking into view that land disposal isn't something, and I agree with that. I do wonder if, for the sake of another small period of time, whether it's a month or 2, to continue to do further evaluations on site X and Race Road isn't a way forward.
My own concern about that is we are at a juncture where we have a new board, effectively. So it's sort of complicated. I'm wondering whether, Peter, I'm looking at you now, whether we could do that much quicker, whilst with the current board, before we go into the full board, because we'll have to bring people up to speed on what is.
Put my pen over there so you can see. I actually did have in my other notes full board. Whether it is, you know, we're only a couple of weeks from having a full board.
But it's quite a complicated subject.
I understand.
Yeah, it's quite a complicated subject, and we have to.
And once we do it, and it goes like this is a 100-year decision.
Yeah, but it does require then bringing everyone up to speed, which adds to the time, because it's a complicated subject.
So,
So in the and sorry, before you you know, because actually no one knew what I was going to say. It was just was being Peter, it's being transparent. Listening to what's going on this morning and everything we've seen, and go, you know, this is a 100-year decision. I'm not wafting on to maybe give Peter and Jackie and Andrew a little bit of time to go, well.
So and I think this comes back. It was the question I was going to ask before. We have had a letter from the residents asking to pause and give them a chance, really.
I must have missed it. I can't say I've read that.
Yeah. No, we have to have that letter. I was going to raise it anyway.
Okay.
So, Peter.
I'll say a couple of things and then pass to Jackie. I mean, at one level, we are fundamentally in the hands of the board as to how you wish to proceed and engage. The analysis that's been done is the analysis that has been done. At this stage, my view is it would not be fruitful to attempt to recast or review the advice that we have received. That is the advice that we have received. Sooner or later, the board will need to make what will be a difficult decision, because it doesn't matter which side we proceed with. There are people that are affected by it, because it is a wastewater treatment plant that we're trying to locate in an area where there are already people that live and work and businesses that operate. I would be very nervous about wanting to take forward more than one serious option into the next phase because of the work that's required to progress the design of the plant, the interactions between that and the discharge options, the hydraulics available, and very quickly trying to do that for two complete things will be an expensive undertaking and time consuming. And I'll stop there and pass to Jackie.
Could I just say one thing before, and you might want to consider this, and we might want to come back to the discussion. I was puzzled as to why we would do further work on site X when actually it was number 3, not number 2. And there was clear blue sky between number 2 and number 3. So Jack, you might want to comment on that.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that, Mr. Chair. So the assessment, as Peter has said, is the assessment completely like for like. The site X alternative does not come close to the previously shortlisted 2, and there is daylight in between them. The other thing, there are a number of other things that weren't factored into the like for like assessment that are relevant. And they include that the design assumptions have changed, and we did do a reassessment based on those changes, just to see what the result would be. The overall rankings don't change. So the Rangs Road site is clearly the preferred site, both using the Becker MCA approach and the parallel Paitiaki Hopu assessment. The other thing that hasn't been factored into that like-for-like assessment is land ownership. So yes, the property owner was present at the hui on Monday, and we did have a kōrero with him, and we'll continue that kōrero around potential reuse opportunities because they're interested in that. But there is no certainty, no guarantee, and there would be an additional cost that would come with an alternative site. One of the key differences that I see between the surrounding land use is the proximity of the residential houses. So for the site X assessment, from the work that's been done, there are 5 properties within 100 metres of the plant footprint, and another 15 to 16 within 200 metres. So they're close, and there is no room to create additional buffer. You've got the Southern Links corridor to the west of that site and Ohopo Road to the east. Yes, the Rangs Road property has surrounding residential properties or rural residential properties, but they are at least 100 metres further away. And the property that we own and control provides significant buffer to do a range of things that you could never do on the site X alternative. So those are some of the reasons why there is daylight in between. We have paused any site-specific work on the Rangs Road site because we would need to do geotechnical assessments, more ecological assessments, a whole range of work. That's all paused. As Peter has said, to try and pick that up on 2 sites would double your costs. And, you know, the nature, as all of you know, the nature of this type of infrastructure means that most people do not want it near them. And so no matter where we go, we will be subject to, I guess, the surrounding land users and landowners.
Okay, we obviously need to talk this through now. I mean, I feel uncomfortable doing more work on site X when it's 3rd on our list, and we've got it seems to me, we spent a lot of money. We've independently looked at site X with Becca, etc. I think, from my point of view, I don't see the point in doing further work on site X. I'm comfortable discounting site X at this point. I am sensitive though to the residents saying we feel, you know, we've not had enough time, etc. But this is not the final decision. This is simply a point in time where we're agreeing a preferred site. And in my view, irrespective of that decision, we have to have a regular programme of touching base with the residents. And on that basis, I guess where I'm coming from is I do think This is a difficult decision. I recognise that, but I think it is time. We've got a comprehensive report. We've gone above and beyond to look at a serious suggestion for an alternative site. It doesn't match up to the preferred site. I don't think further work will do anything on that, frankly. And if you were looking at another site, it would be site number 2 rather than number 3. But I'll be interested in Tim's comments, and then I'll come back to Dave and see if we can resolve the position.
Thanks, Kevin. The board, I guess, has already pushed forward once.
Yeah.
Doing the assessment of site X. So there's been a lot of work that's been done. We are in a difficult position. And I take up what you've said. They've probably a decision should be made what we can. But however, we find ourselves where we find ourselves. I'm looking at it from what's the best interest of the approach, and having some backup resilience to this system is a priority for us all. What I would like the board to support, Kevin, is that we look to push ahead the work on the wastewater reuse, if that's possible. I think that will be in the interest of all of our people in our community if we can reuse our wastewater more than we do. But I think that'll be something which I like. So it's a table with the board to make that a priority. But in saying that, I'm probably leaning towards your position at you.
Maybe I'll ask after we've had a response from Dave what the implications of that are, Jackie, if you could just reflect on that. Is there anything further you want to say? Dave, do you want to come back?
Sure. I'll pick up on reuse first.
Yeah.
So, at the Central Interceptor project in Auckland, there was a reuse plant. A trial reuse plant was established, so it's not fun to go and learn. We did actually get them there to drink some too, which was good, and they made sure it was from the reuse side, not the industrial. And actually, we were using 1 million litres a day for industrial water that was not potable, but it was one step short of that. So, but it's really expensive. And then as we talked to some of the residents, they're going, what do you mean reuse? We went, yeah, that's right. The sewage becomes your drinking water. So, and I don't think there's a legislative framework in New Zealand yet for that. So, but I take your point. So a bit of padding for time, but just sharing some knowledge. I've got to say, I'm still not 100% convinced. But then as I was listening, our point C recommendation is to enable master planning, design, consenting, planning. But what I've heard put forward is that actually we wouldn't be approving all of that today, because to get to design and consenting, there's a whole lot of stages and gates to get to, and that this wouldn't be the final decision. That actually what I'm hearing is saying is to enable master planning, because there's potential that through master planning there'll be some other issues come up that.
And at its core, we've still got 3 discharge options that are live. We've got to run them to ground. If in the design and discharge or re-entry it doesn't match, then we will need to revisit that. So this is
we also need to do, I guess, visual renders, all of those types of things, look at mitigations on the site itself to support the notice of requirements, applications, and other approvals that would be needed. So what we're seeking is approval to proceed with this for the purpose of those assessments.
Effectively to begin, not to complete, to begin.
Which then means our recommendation for point C actually needs some rewording for what's just been said.
And I wonder, on top of that, and it's probably a theme for the water metering report and the CATI report, whether there's a bit of a there's some milestones in this project which need to come back to the board, which enable the residents to come back at various stages and to us to hear from them, rather than it just becomes a management project and that's it. And this is a very significant strategic project. It's going to be a very big number. There's a lot of work still to do. It could change the composition of the proposal.
And not just needs to come back to the board. As we work through the re-entry options, there's a range of engagement we're going to need to do with
the
quite a
community.
variety of stakeholders.
With the community. Yeah.
There are significant issues associated with every one of those that will need to be solved in order to get a consent for discharge.
So without recording it as a decision for a moment, if we had a report from Peter at our next meeting for the board's role in a number of key strategic projects about what the milestones might be, etc., this would be one of them. Phuket would be another. Accepting that with Phuket, we have got Gary MacDonald and government's arrangement there, so we don't want to double up. And water metering for phase 2, similar thing really. So I think, would that provide you with some assurance, Dave, given the concerns you've raised?
Not sure I quite follow it.
What I'm saying is
Water
that,
meter in Phuket.
what I'm saying is that here,
a little there.
there are probably a number of key milestones as we get towards the
100%
final
there is.
decision.
There is on.
Yeah.
On this. And,
Yeah.
I think that clearly the Residents Association, if there's a representative, Chris is clearly, is a spokesperson for them and has some background, but I would just encourage management to go. How do we have a new, like there's a prescribed engagement, there's sort of better engagement, there's sort of new engagement way for IAWAI as opposed to just,
Well, we should have no surprises, shouldn't we?
yeah, and so I really take that point about and it only came out because the Residents Association pretty much got it at the same time we did. So, it wasn't, it was maybe, I think I got it Thursday. So it was pretty close, but it's a pretty short time from Monday to today to work through and actually have discussions, etc.
So if we can
I'm still uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I've got to say that. And
Yeah.
I know as part of our
Yeah.
the way we have to work, we have to be unanimous across the 3.
Yeah.
So, and I sat here just because I wanted to sit on this side, on that side, but it sort of looks like
Yeah.
there's a division, but that completely,
well, that's the nature of the board, isn't it?
completely, and actually having different perspectives is should be healthy. So, I come back, A, B, D, E, and F, I'm good with. So it's definitely the wording around C and what we're now actually from this discussion proving with the site. Because the resolution, says a whole lot more than where I think we've got to.
What would you suggest?
I think it's we're going with Rose Road as to enable master planning. Full stop. But that may not be the right words from the planning, but it says around designs, consents, planning approval, applications.
Applications is the key.
Okay, but
Well,
that has to come back.
Would it be
goes
helpful,
forward,
I'm
doesn't
just
it?
thinking aloud here,
There's
would
no
it be-
cost on it.
would it be helpful to say that we approve the work to progress the master plan, et cetera, in relation to the preferred site, and that we'll come back to the board with the recommended for the final decision? That's I think the key
So
issue.
that final decision to lodge the applications?
Yeah,
So my sense is there's a very significant milestone before you get to that.
Yeah.
Because we've
which
got,
is the outflow.
and that is critical. And then there's even in the applications, there's a range of things about, well, what is the scope of mitigation works that we are prepared to contemplate, in order to minimise the impact of development. So I think there are at least two, possibly more key things that we need to come back to.
So could we add a G? Then that's, I'm just trying to respond to their concerns. Could we add a G which says, we will, the board wants to, there are a couple of key milestones here. One is the decision on the outflow arrangements, and two is the, what the final proposal is to lodge the consent. And what the timing is around that, but you do have a timetable, don't you, Jackie? So we can even put that in the recommendation. So it's clear that this is part of a marathon. It's not a final decision. It's just the preferred site
I take
for further work.
And so if I can just ask Peter one final clarification. So to make sure I've heard correctly, that the site could fail on the discharge location.
No. So the discharge re-entry
Yes.
options are not on the site. It's one of the criteria
they
that
come from the site.
It's one of the criteria that's in the assessment of the sites.
Okay.
Is proximity to potential re-entry locations, and the site X assessment.
Yes, it's further.
Yeah,
Yeah, because we've visited, saw it, so.
When you say fail, you mean through the consenting process?
Equally, it is possible that we are unable to consent a discharge. Full stop. That is a possible outcome.
Okay, we've got a problem then.
Well,
So we don't know that until we've done the work.
That's the reality that we face. You know, we're talking about sinking re-entry of treated wastewater into the Awa.
And equally,
that is not an insignificant.
And equally, it could fail on through the fast track process overall.
Yes.
And clearly, we wouldn't want to support an application that's not likely to progress.
Yeah. And the government may change, and any new government may not have that process.
That's always by the time.
Fast track may not exist by the
Yeah.
time that we get to wanting to use it. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if there's a G about and including how, including continue to engage with stakeholders through the process.
Yeah. On a proactive, no surprises basis. Happy with that. Happy that we're seeking the board to be the final decision maker on the outflow proposal.
re-entry location.
Unfortunately, it have to be.
Yeah, and the consent and the final proposal for the consent process as well. And let's put the dates in for that. So that will be it. And I think we need some similar things around the other projects. That's all I was suggesting, because they're all very big projects. Okay. Are you happy with that?
I'm happy with that. And just really just touching on what I raised before in terms of reuse work. I would think go down a huge piece of work on that, but have that at the forefront of our engagement with our stakeholders.
I will respond to that, Tim. It's a really important piece of work that IAWAI needs to do, is really look at what is our reuse strategy and what policy provisions might we need to make those things actually happen, because it's something that's talked about a lot, it's been talked about for years, but no one really takes a step to make that occur. We know it's going to be a very important consideration as part of the Pukete consenting process. It's already been tabled as a something that needs to be looked at closely, and we've put development of a reuse strategy on our work list. Not for straight away, because we've got a lot of other things to do, but it will be needed alongside some of these consenting applications and processes. For the purpose of the southern plant, we haven't discounted beneficial reuse as an option. That's there as something that needs to be considered and implemented where possible. And it could include potential use, or definitely will include potential use at the plant. Given the proximity to the industrial precinct around the airport, there's some opportunities there, but to be fair, the price of water needs to increase to make that a viable option
Commercially
that
viable.
customers
Yeah.
will take up.
Yeah.
We would also look at how we might utilise it for landscaping, that type of thing, and any ecological
I
enhancement.
think where I was coming from was really just utilisation options.
Yeah.
And mayor rights.
So could we add another thing just to say as part of the process that will include an assessment of any options for reuse for this site? Okay. Okay. All right. Long discussion.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed.
So
So can I just
guess,
confirm that the resolutions as drafted, that the board approves the resolutions as drafted, but with the addition of a G, which is something like, and I can wordsmith this, requesting that key milestones, including outflow arrangements and final proposal to lodge consents, be presented back to the board for decision. Continue to engage with stakeholders throughout the process, and then as part of that,
On a proactive and no
in
surprise
a meaningful
basis.
way, or
Yeah. On a
And-
proactive and no surprises. Yeah. And also the issue about as part of the evaluation of the final proposal, we will address the options around reuse.
yeah. Everyone comfortable with that? Thank you.
not especially, but not wishing to be some, we have to decide at some point. So
Yeah.
with other milestones in place, can agree with that.
Okay. Right, agreed. Thank you. Right. So don't we?
Next, we've got our auditor Ethel joining
Yes.
online.
Yeah.
Is it possible to take a break? Chair?
Yeah.
It is only going
Nathan, do
to be.
you know?
Yeah, should be fine.
It should be okay.
Yeah,
Do you know?
Just texting, yeah. Okay, we'll take a break now then.
But we do have a tea trolley set up in the correct room with tea, coffee for your team up there.
Thank you.
let's begin. Just before we bring Athol in, just to be really clear, we can have a situation where we do have a disagreement on the board and we don't have a unanimous decision, but obviously we want to talk things through and get to unanimity wherever we can. And I think on a big issue like that, it's really important. You know, so, but we technically could have a full vote. But I don't really want to go there. You know, it's not good governance to do that. So I think we make an extra effort to address the concerns and move on. All right. So we've got Athol from was it District Audit?
Audit New Zealand.
Audit New Zealand, who's going to talk about the 26-27 audit plan. Is he online?
Just trying to read this.
Yeah, he said he's
He's in the waiting room, but I can't see him in the waiting room. Could he?
like a scout.
Maybe can we resend the invite? Or can we ring him?
Nathan, would you mind just asking him to rejoin, please?
He's in the waiting room, apparently, so this sounds like.
He's not in my waiting
No,
room.
I know. I'm
So
just
he just goes out and then tries to come back in.
We're on,
if not, resend them the link.
let's see, Teams also.
It's him.
Can we resend them the link?
He is there now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning. Can you hear us? You're on mute.
Oh,
Yeah, cool. We can hear you. Do you want to introduce? I'm Kevin Lavery. We've met before, I think, some time ago with Peter. I've got Tim Manikow on my right, and opposite we've got Dave Chambers. I think you will know most of the officers.
Yeah.
So do you want to introduce yourself? And you're going to talk a bit about the 26-7 audit plan, I believe.
yes, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Kia ora. My name's Athol Graham. I'm the appointed auditor for the audit of IAWAI for this year and going forward. So we've been doing some planning work with management to get to a point where we're issuing an audit. We've issued a draft audit plan, fee letter, and an engagement letter for your consideration today. Noting that the current year audit, so for the year 30 June 2026, will be quite different to the audit for next year. So we'll obviously need to come back and have further conversations about the audit risks for the 2027 year and indeed the scope and work required. So the focus of the documents is for the 30 June 2026 audit. So I'm happy just to
interrupt briefly, the board
Yep.
has not received those documents. So if you could just give us if there's anything pertinent that they need to know from those documents,
Okay.
spelled out, because they have not received those yet.
Okay, no, that's fine. Look, there's three documents, and I'm mindful that you've got a big agenda, so I'll try and keep this fairly brief, but happy to take questions at the end. There's an audit engagement letter, which is a standard document between an auditor and an audited entity outlining roles and responsibilities. There is a audit fee letter, which is the contract between the auditor and the audited entity in relation to the scope of the audit and the fees we estimate at that stage as a result. So I've had discussions with Nathan about that, and I think we've landed on a fee that's fair at this point for this year, noting that it's all relatively new and a little bit of a journey of discovery in terms of IAWAI. So just keeping our powder dry in terms of costs, but we think we can do it for what we've put in there. And the last document, which is probably the key one, is the audit plan, which outlines what we see as the risks and issues for the audit for the 2026 year. I will just open that up and just give you a quick rundown of those issues, just so you're aware. And if it doesn't resonate, or if you feel we've missed something, please feel free to come back. It is a draft. So the key risks and issues for IAWAI that we have an audit response for, number one, is just in relation to the going concern assumption. Not that we think there's any particular risk, but as part of the preparation of the work papers for the annual report, we will want to know what the future forecasts are a year out from the date that we signed the audit report and the date that the board adopts the annual report, just to ensure that the implications of taking on the debt, the future debt forecasts, and the assets and the revenue assumptions going forward are reasonable, and that is a good basis for continuing to assume that IAWAI is a going concern in the long term, certainly at least a year from the date we sign, as mentioned. The other item that we will be looking at a little bit, we're looking at closely, is the underlying agreement in relation to the shareholder loan between IAWAI and its shareholder. That will be a related party balance, so there'll be disclosures about that, but also if there are any concessionary arrangements embedded in the agreements that may affect the valuation of that liability. So we'll just work through that as well. There is a standard risk around management control override. We just need to do a minimum number of procedures just to ensure that there is no override of what would be normal controls. We tend to focus in on journals in relation to that work, but that's fairly standard across most audits. We've got a materiality included in the draft audit plan. The materiality we've applied at this stage, and we can change it throughout the audit process as the balance sheet and the P&L change. But the overall materiality for IAWAI is 450,000, based on some draft numbers we've seen. That's based on 3%, I think, of expenditure normally. The legislative reporting framework, we believe IAWAI would report as a CCO, and that we've had a number of discussions with DIA to make sure we understand the transitional arrangements in the between the local government and the local government water services legislation. They're a little bit, we found some things we didn't quite understand. So at this point, we believe IAWAI would report for the 2026 30 June period as a council controlled organisation. And then when the water assets transfer on 1 July in the next couple of weeks, they would become a water services provider and report against the requirements in the new Local Government Water Services Act. We expect that the CCO, our view that it's a CCO, would be correct, and the reporting would be relatively simple compared to what you'll be reporting going forward. Those are the legislative time frames. So we will work with management to ensure you have an annual report audit opinion by the stat deadline, which would be 30th of September at the latest. There's a few dates in the audit plan just to pin down, but certainly we won't want to sign any later than the 30th of September. And if we can do it any earlier, we will try and organise ourselves to be able to do that for the board. I think those are the key things. So I'm happy to take questions.
I'll just ask a question then about So this is about the audit for the 25-6 year, when we're actually a relatively small organisation with a circa $10 million establishment budget, etc., with some delegations in some areas. Yeah, okay.
And that's why the work's more around the transfer agreement and the loan agreement side of things.
Yeah.
For that. And then the second year, we're a water services provider,
It's the
and therefore it's
proper thing.
much more complicated. We're actually EY for actual purpose.
Yeah.
And therefore, looking at things like the asset transfers and stuff will be a lot more thorough.
Yeah.
The second year, which, yeah.
So effectively light touch and for the current financial year.
Yeah.
A more comprehensive job for 26-7. Yeah.
I guess relative, I mean, the audit will be to the normal audit standards, but there's less happening in the first year. So
Yeah, it's a $10 million spend compared to a several hundred million. Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
It's no
And we have-
essence of not operating the plant. and
Yeah.
Auditing of KPIs.
Peter, did you want to come in?
Well, just so we've received drafts. They haven't been circulated. My sense in terms of the procedural stuff is a resolution delegating probably to the chair to sign where it's necessary from the director's point of view and the chief executive as necessary would be helpful so that we can conclude the audit engagements and get on with life.
Yeah.
I think that's consistent with this is not a complicated thing, it's the establishment of the process.
But we are, I guess, one of the things that's going to be significant going forward, we are about to establish a finance and audit committee. And obviously we'd be looking to you, Atul, to be there on a regular basis, etc. And that's going to be important going forward, isn't it? Because we've not had that today, being in establishment mode.
Yeah. Look, I'm more than happy to be involved in an audit committee and be there as you feel fit. Often for my big audits where there are complications, we sit through most of those.
Yeah.
Most of the agenda. It helps us keep up with what's happening and gives the committee an opportunity to ask us questions too. But I'll follow your lead on
One of the key jobs
when and when.
is to do effectively the year end and the annual report, isn't it?
And that's what this is about.
Yeah.
Each week, so
Okay.
committee's different.
Are there any other questions or comments? Yeah.
All right.
That's great. Are there any other issues you want to raise, Atul?
No, thank you for the chance just to bring these to you. And we'll just wait for you to come back and I can finalise the documents as soon as you're ready. Yep.
Look, thank you for coming. Look forward to seeing you in due course and probably more regularly at the Audit and Finance Committee. But no doubt sometimes at the board as well. So good to see you.
You're welcome. Okay, you have a good rest of your meeting. Kia kite.
Okay, so we've had our tea break. We're going to go back to Peter's report. And I thought, Peter, if you want to introduce your report, I'd like to say a few words on behalf of the board as well, because I think it's a very significant meeting today. It's the last of the establishment phase. And I think it is a good time to reflect on what we've done. So over to you, Peter.
Thank you. Early on in his time with us, Kevin demonstrated his artistic ability with drawing things. I've been known to sing ditties. So in the spirit of the excitement that comes with Christmas, I've borrowed the tune and changed the words. And today it goes 13 sleeps to go, 13 sleeps to go low, 13 sleeps till IAWAI takes lots of staff and waters assets and massive debt. 13 sleeps to go. So that was the entertainment piece for today. On a more serious note, this agenda is enormous and quite apart from the establishment piece reflects just about every big decision that councils have kicked down the road and not addressed for decades. And in the space of 12 months, at the same time as we were standing up the organisation, we have grouped them up. And today, what's in front of you are profound decisions that will shape water and wastewater across Hamilton and Waikato district for decades. And I say that, in addition to establishment, because, the board was delegated responsibility for the big things in order to keep going. The team that has driven that is substantially Andrew and Jackie, and cobbling together and borrowing resources from both councils in order to make a difference. The workload has been significant. The pace at which they've worked out, largely unprecedented in terms of what we've been able to do. In terms of the establishment piece, there's a separate item on the agenda that gives you that sense. But equally, when I compare the costs that other water organisations are spending with the way in which we have approached establishment, as Kevin noted me yesterday, the establishment budget for Waikato Waters is 20 million plus, and we will underspend on the $11 million budget that we started with. Now, there are consequences of doing things on the smell of an oily rag, but we really have approached this from what is the least we can do in order to get something that functions, and then move to how we build what we need over a sensible period of time. And that's relied on enormous contributions from a very small team. Nikita's at the end of the table. She has been all over the finances right through this, and that's been a Herculean labour, I think is the right way to describe that. Trying to unscramble waters out of the Hamilton accounts where waters was just in the noise. Trying to align the way that Waikato saw the world with the way that Hamilton sees the world, and make that work in a system sense and a reporting sense. That's been huge and complex. The work that's gone into the transfer of staff and making that possible, that's been led by Michelle Kabir, but has had contributions from a wide range of other staff. The work that Becca Brook has done in sorting out shared services and how that will work across the whole variety of shared services. The work that Natasha Henson and the establishment team have done. It's huge. Vishal's contribution to creating a water services strategy, where we were pioneering what a water services strategy looked like as the first cab off the rank. So I suppose I sit here today feeling immensely proud of the work that's been done, and really excited about what comes next. And as much as anything else, excited by the calibre of the team that we've been able to assemble. I count myself incredibly lucky that we have been able to secure what I think is, on a New Zealand standard, a very, very pretty and capable team. So serve us well. That's where we're at.
Very good, brilliant intro. You've certainly beaten me in that. I am working on a presentation in another place. To music, by the way, with cartoons. And my first choice of music had been a fellow North-Easterner, Mark Knopfler's Brothers in Arms, until I discovered how expensive it was to use the royalty. So we've gone with some free copyrights, with acoustic guitar, but very good. Look, just to begin, it's sort of, I'll invite my quote, so I'll begin and end with if you'll forgive me. I like Winston Churchill's, this is not the end, it's not the beginning of the end, but it is the end. It is perhaps the end of the beginning. And I think that really sums up where we are. And I think the team under your leadership, Peter, have done a superb job in getting us to go live. And I wanted to say a huge, huge thank you. We agreed a strong focus on a safe transition has been the mantra all the way through. I don't like the phrase minimal viable product. but it has been about that. But actually, it's sort of keep things simple, don't be too clever, transition first, transform later. But actually, don't confuse that position with avoiding and fronting up on difficult issues and actually putting the foundations in place to go through a pretty fundamental transformation. I think today's agenda shows that it's a lot more than just a pure safe transition. And I think if you look at it all the way through on the money, I think we've got a pretty good plan that certainly has listened to the concerns in the community about the cost of living crisis and the real deep-seated concerns around affordability. We've halved the charges. We know that's not enough, but it's a start and it's a step in the right direction. We know that, and it's become clearer with Nathan's arrival, that the existing charge payers have been subsidising growth to quite a significant extent. We have a growth levy now going operational in a few weeks' time. It doesn't change the dial fundamentally, but again, it's a step in the right direction. The water reforms were heavily focused on the infrastructure deficit, and our infrastructure is younger than many of our similar-sized jurisdictions in the rest of New Zealand because of the amount of growth. So we're probably in a better position than many, but we've still got some challenges in that space. And again, we've got a report in private, which is looking to have a much longer term partnership and do something serious in that space, which again is a fundamental feature of water reform. And the report we just had on, it was ostensibly about the site, but it was also about the wastewater system in Waikato and Hamilton, wasn't it? And one of the exciting things for me is that we are looking to begin serious steps to move to connect up a network for Waikato and Hamilton to make it more resilient going forward and joined up. And most water entities in New Zealand, really, it's a shared service on a whole lot of little disparate networks that will never be connected. So that's quite an exciting. We're starting to see steps today in both Puketi and Southern Wastewater Treatment. We know that water metering is a proven way of reducing water loss by minimising leaks and changing behaviour. Waikato is already metered, Hamilton isn't yet. And we know that Hamilton's water loss is, I think, mid-20s, isn't it? From memory.
12.7%. 12.7%
12?
last year.
Yeah.
It's with that large plus or minus 30% because of the uncertainty.
Yeah. So the water metering will make a huge difference in that space, and there's some big prizes there, operational savings, but probably the big one is deferred investment, isn't it? Which so that really getting on top of the users' dollars and make sure we spend the absolute minimum we need to meet growth requirements going forward, a really big prize. And if we're going to have a modern 21st century water company, we need a modern information system. And again, that's something that's already being addressed. And finally, for me, you can't be a good water services company without good staff. And I think what's impressed me with the change process has been the early notification, the early certainty about where people were going to be in the organisation, and a minimal restructuring and reorganisation. And the fact that we've had a transfer process, which I think has been pretty much near 100% of offers have been accepted, that's really impressive. When you look at our labour shortages in water services now, to have achieved that result, I think is a huge testament to the senior team here. So in recognition of a job very well done, I'd just like to ask Dave and Tim to stand and show our appreciation of Peter and the whole team.
I'll give it to Haka, but on behalf of me, Peter, I just wanted to say thank you to you and the team in terms of the work that you've all done. We're quite innovative in the Waikato when it comes to the water space. We provided Auckland water when they needed it. And we recently negotiated the Waikato River settlement. But we're a bit slow on when it comes to the water metering space. But we're here now. It'll be all right. So I really just wanted to just acknowledge that and also acknowledge safe transitions. It really comes down to unity. Unity, not just in terms of our staff and our board, but also our councils and our iwi partners. So it's quite heartening the last couple of pōwhiri that I've been to, where we've had our actual iwi doing the pōwhiri and welcoming our new staff to our respective organisations. So for them to do that, I think that's a good thing. I've been involved in this water space for some time. I think back when Pukete was still doing primary treatment. So I guess where we are now is we'll come along. That's good. So it's just from me.
Thanks, Dave. Do you want
Thanks. Yeah. So, I just think it's been outstanding work, and for me, I feel it works all right for you as well. But for me, the only reason why I wanted to extend beyond the year is because of the people and the quality of the work that you're doing. Quite frankly, if you haven't been doing it all, just said, I've done my year. Good luck to the rest of you. But it's just quite simply been outstanding work. Kicked off by Kevin. Acknowledge that as the executive chair for a little bit of time. Seems like ancient history now, but pre-Christmas probably didn't do a lot. It's only happened since Christmas. But yeah, outstanding. Really, it's fantastic. Great to everybody here and the people that you've worked with and that work with you. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much. I think it was important to acknowledge that it is a momentous day today, really, with a massive agenda of media issues. And it is really a symbol of that movement from transition to transformation, really. So well done, everyone. We know Peter's report, and we now move on to the water services strategy. Do we, I mean, obviously we've seen it numerous times. We've been out to consultation.
Yeah.
And we've got support of both councils. Is there anything, Vishal, you want to?
I'm happy to start and hand over to Peter as well if he wants to say a few words. But as you said, Chair, this strategy has been 12 months in the making and informed through engagement with the shareholders, with Waikato Tainui, with Mana Whenua, Hapu, private sector, and various interest groups. Formal public consultation took place from 3rd March to 12th of April. The board deliberated on submissions on 7th of May and directed staff to make some refinements, which included a more explicit reference to Te Mana o Te Wai, a more explicit reference to Te Mana o Te Moana, deferring the proposed growth charge for non-residential development to WSS2, applying half per hui when assessing residential growth charge for secondary minor dwellings, and also waiving the growth charge for Papakainga through the waiver policy. You also directed staff to undertake a refinement of the capital works program to reflect the expected year-end position immediately prior to the transfer of responsibility, and also in consideration of the current global economic and supply chain constraints. So this review results in deferrals of about 1.3 million in year one, an increase of 17.6 million in year two, and an increase in 19.8 in year three, a decrease of 22.4 in year four, and the remaining outline year movements total 0.4 million. Staff have also undertaken a verification of the allocation of costs associated with shared services, and this has been reflected in the updated financial information, which has been incorporated in the strategy as well. So staff have made all the amendments required to both the summary version and the detailed version of the strategy, which is in your pack. And importantly, as Dave mentioned, this strategy confirms a reduction in water charges for both councils as previously forecast in the WSDP. So the final strategy, the fees and charges schedule, the waiver policy, and the significance engagement policy are all in your pack, and it's now presented to you for adoption together with the appropriate recommendations. I'd also just like to acknowledge the work that Nikita has done in terms of supporting me and providing the financial strategy in support of the narrative, and so much appreciated, Nikita.
Yeah, I'd like to underline that if I may, because I think it's fair to say before Christmas, Peter and I were a little bit worried because we haven't seen too much. And actually, the good work of the finance team came through very strong in January, February, and I think it's really good. So well done. May I say also, I think it's a really good initial plan. We know that we're going to have to do obviously water services. The work begins now, really, doesn't it? Water services strategy 2.0. And probably there's a couple of areas that need work on for me. One is I still feel that capital programs are a bit spiky, and we didn't really, as a group, I know we took some growth out there for good reasons, but I still think there's probably a bit of work to be done in terms of looking at those spikes and trying to smooth it over the period for water services strategy 2.0. We know that we've got a fair bit of underspending from last year, and particularly in Waikato district, that will appear this year. Probably the other area is it's inevitable. We've got a new name, we're a new entity. The awareness of us out there is definitely low. I know Anna Mine is working on a program, and it's just kicked in, actually starts next week, I believe, which is good. But I do think we need to look at the whole engagement side so that we've got an engagement program around community groups, residents associations, around iwi, around major customers, developers, contractors, so that by the time we get to water services strategy 2.0, when we engage on the funding, we've already done some sessions with each of those key audiences going forward. But I think it's been a job really well done. We've discussed it many times, Dave and Tim. Are there any either observations or questions you have for the team?
A couple.
Yeah.
Reiterating outstanding work. I'd love to know in due course what money has been saved in total dollars over what would have been, because I think it says $174 for residents in Waikato district and Hamilton versus the water service strategy, but that per resident, like, what was the total of that? How much have we actually saved? I think it's millions of dollars, probably.
So this is against the DIA signed off plans.
Correct.
The difference between saved.
Yeah, not charged.
Not charged.
Yeah. It's like buying, I bought 2 pairs of shoes for 300, but I saved 300. So anyway, we should.
It's all report.
Great to know.
Need to remember that we used increased borrowing in the first 2 years to establish.
Anyway, I think the growth. So yeah, fantastic work. The growth charges and the bravery to put that in. Be easy not to start down that. I just want to acknowledge that. I won, as it turned out, $20 on State of Origin last night, and I'm prepared to double it for anybody who reckons that IAWAI can spend $800 million in their first year of operation. So if anyone wants to take a $40 bet with me, because I reckon they can't. So if you reckon they can, it'd be another $40 coming to me. But I know that they've said they're going to spend $800 million, and half of it's going to be on renewals in the first year. How the hell are they going to spend $400 million from 1 July this year to the end of June next year? So I think the reality that what you've put in for your capital program aligned with your chief executive's KPI to deliver the capital program is a real step forward. And I hope for the team that they're not then double guessing, respect to the previous conversation, but double guessing, have we got money to do this, Peter? You know, will we actually, because we've been here before, and, you know, will we actually have money? So I think the capital program of 3 billion over 10 years in the fastest growing area, some people, developers might go, oh, we should be able to do anything we want anywhere we want. It's just completely ludicrous. So yeah, outstanding work, some courage shown to introduce things like growth charges and start to make a move on growth paying for growth. And yeah, I think it's a great shape. Thank you.
In just we've not been said. Thanks, Michelle. I know that Michelle's been doing quite a lot of work before we even had a first draft behind the scenes. I think having our people behind the scenes doing a lot of work before this already released the draft.
Yeah.
Gave them confidence.
Yes.
And some stability that something that is going to be released in the future is going to consider the needs. So.
Yeah, no, thank you, Vishal. I know you're going, you've gone back to Waikato District, haven't you?
I'll be involved in the background.
Yeah. And I mean, Peter said it all. Really appreciate what you've done. Look, can I then take it that we've got unanimous support for the formal adoption of the water services strategy? And thank you, everyone. Let's move on to the small matter of water metering.
Shall I take off? So before we start this item, if I may, I just really want to acknowledge the very significant input and leadership from Lisa and Alan who's here today. The pilot has been very successful for usually the strangest reasons. So some parts of it didn't work.
Yeah, that's the point of the pilot.
And that was the single greatest benefit from the pilot phase. And that has allowed us to shape our direction going forward, and it's certainly shaping the approach to the commercials and the partnership approach. The key decision sought from the board today is the decision to proceed. Based on the earlier conversations today, very happy to expand Resolution G, which is the check-in, to include a more nuanced check-in, and at the board's discretion, I'd offer perhaps a check-in at the conclusion of the commercials, at the conclusion of an updated engagement plan with the community, and in addition to the conclusion of that full pressure zone pilot with lessons learned, but prior to moving beyond that second pilot phase. So with that, I'll pass to Lisa to go through the detail.
Thank you. So thank you for having me here today. Delivering universal water metering for Hamilton has been envisaged for many, many years. The resulting efficiencies in water use and consequential deferred investment are a foundational element of the assumed savings in the IAWAI water services strategy. To put it bluntly, the cost of not introducing metering will impact Hamiltonians more than the cost of introducing them. But looking at the benefits of universal metering solely through the financial lens only tells part of the story. Te Ture Whaimana holds a vision for the future where a healthy Waikato River sustains abundant life and prosperous communities who in turn are all responsible for restoring and protecting the health and well-being of the awa and all it embraces for generations to come. This is not simply an environmental document. It speaks equally to the well-being of people, the economic, social, cultural and spiritual relationships with the awa. A river that is diminished diminishes the people that are connected to it. A river that is restored restores something in us too. It makes sense then that the water metering is about more than just an infrastructure decision. It's a practical expression of our obligations as kaitiaki. IAWAI is also guided by the purpose to care for wai as a taonga, sustaining life and safeguarding water for future generations. Improving the efficiency of water use is essential to delivering on this purpose, while also providing for growth within current consented abstraction limits. The investment case notes that the existing water abstraction consent for Hamilton is insufficient across the term of the consent. Hamilton's water demand is expected to exceed its maximum allowable consented take of 146 megalitres per day in the next 10 years for the current growth assumptions, unless a significant reduction in per capita demand is achieved, and certainly before this consent is due for renewal in 2044. We're not using water efficiently when compared to the national average. That's approximately 1.5 times higher than comparable municipalities that are metered, such as Tauranga. Water metering is a critical tool to better understand demand, to manage and reduce water use and loss. It's also widely recognised as a fair and equitable method of charging based on actual usage. This is evidenced through the small pilot to test water meter technologies in Hamilton East and in Te Akau. The pilot identified and addressed leaks across 19% of the properties participating within Hamilton, equating to an estimated 5.1 million litres of water saved per annum from this small but mighty group of volunteers alone. Without the improved efficiency expected through water metering, estimated at a 20% reduction in our peak demand, water demand will require accelerated investment into new infrastructure of around 780 million across 30 years. So this is currently unbudgeted, and some of this spend will be required within the next 10 years to cater to growth. The introduction of meters was provided for in the water services strategy, which was consulted on from the 3rd of March to 12th of April this year. The paper before the board seeks endorsement to proceed with the rollout of water meters across Hamilton City and to delegate to the Chief Executive Officer authority to conclude the commercial negotiations with the preferred suppliers and to implement the procurement strategy for program delivery resources as set out within the investment case and within the cost envelope indicated in the water services strategy. This rollout would happen over a 4-year period and will be delivered in 2 phases, as stated, with the opportunity to check in with the board after the full pressure zone pilot. Any question?
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Lisa, I thought it was an excellent paper.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very comprehensive. The only thing I'd like to say, perhaps in response to what you said, Andrew, the resolution G, if I put a tick on it. So for me, I'm more than happy that any updates come via our CE and executive monthly reports as required, as something to tell us, as opposed to any formal, if it's going swimmingly well, you might just put a line going, it's all going great. Okay, cool. The only thing for me is not just the lessons learned, but is the technology actually working? So you've found that you couldn't just, on some of the older commercial meters, they couldn't just have data loggers. So we've fixed some technology as we go wider. Does the stuff actually work? I'm a bit burnt by that elsewhere, where they got to 60,000 meters and then someone was brave enough to go, well, actually, they don't really work. And when you go, what does that mean? It goes, we can't bill off them. So it's like, oh, yeah, it doesn't work then. So I just would encourage you to not have an immigration department, we'll just push ahead because we've got the full approval. It's like, if it don't work, it don't work. Let's come back and work through. But otherwise, I thought it was an excellent paper. More than happy to just have updates personally in your normal reporting, not needing to do anything else really, as you suggested, Andrew, and get the pressure zone and go, okay, do we then push go on everything else? Is it actually working? Is it going to do the job that we want it to do?
I think just coming back and building on Dave's point, because we have had a discussion on this, I think my starting point would be, it's got my 100% support, by the way. I think it's an excellent paper on a complicated topic, but it's about environment, it's about charging, it's huge, so it's huge. We're going to have a major change from capital rates in Hamilton to volumetric pricing. There are all sorts of options. I know this very well now. I'm getting better. You know, I've got one jurisdiction where it's variable on use, 98%. Another which is 40, 49, 51. So there are a whole lot of options there. There's a construction program going on for the next 3 or 4 years as part of the rollout as well. All of these things are going to be high profile, in your face, and I think the board have to be across some of the key decisions there. So I would like to see G strengthened to reflect that. And I'm actually I'm comfortable you coming back as we were discussing earlier, because I think some of it will be informed by that phase one. Once you've done phase one, I think you'll have a clear view about what the rollout program for the remainder of Hampton looks like.
Sure.
And what those key decisions. But
100%.
you know, the sort of issue Dave just raised around technology, how we do the volume, how much is volumetric, how much is fixed, all of those sorts of things. I think a clear set of key decisions. For me, they have to be. I think it's in your interest that you get that board support and we're across it, because this is going to be high profile and therefore quite political going forward, and you need our full backing all the way through. But I think it's an excellent report on a complicated topic and a really important step forward for Hamilton, but also for the wider entity, because this is going to be the replacement system in Waikato going forward as well.
Just for me, Chairman, totally support recommendation. It's probably long overdue. But in saying that, I think I've been around Hamilton for a long time. I think 90% of the job is making the decision to do the water meeting in terms of this is from a Joe Public perspective. The other part in terms of rolling it out, that's what we have to do. But just to get that over the line, so that it's going for the water meeting, I think that's the key for the community. Once they see that from us, the rest is just implementation. Hard, but it's still implemented.
Peter and then Andrew.
I just wanted to talk through a bit further the sort of milestones and engagement, because for me, I think it's important that we separate what's going to be a very complicated conversation about how we charge and how we make the move from capital value to other things, from the milestone reporting of the rollout of the meters themselves. So my sense is we need to keep them as two separate things. We need to run this as a program that's going to get the meters in the ground and ensure that we've got all of the technology talking and delivering in the right time frame. And I think it would be unhelpful to confuse that with
make that clear. But we obviously need to be across those.
How we get to pricing is the big issue for the 12 months ahead. And yes, there will be a whole sequence of engagements, not just with the board, but with the councils and the public as how we step through that.
Just comment on Dave's question just around confidence and does it work? It keeps me awake at night as well. That was one of the reasons behind the pilot.
Yes.
And essentially, these are dumb meters. They're bog standard, tried and true, proven mechanical meters you get anywhere around the world cheaply, but with a bolt-on data module. And so yesterday I was looking at a heat mapper and how effective that network performs, because that's the key bit. And through I said some parts of the pilot didn't work, but it's very clear that by selected technology is working like 100% coverage, transmission rate with a few little missing bits, but it's almost a sea of that's working continuously. So those performance assessments are very much front of mind. The fallback in the event things don't quite work out is they are still mechanical meters, they can still be read, just not digitally. So that's the hopefully unlikely plan B scenario, but it was the point of testing this technology.
Yeah, no, really good.
Sorry to interrupt, just because the comms on that will be important, because there must be some stupid people up north, because some of the meters, it was the same thing, it was digital, but it wasn't transmitting. And when the team came to find the meter to read it, they found someone had poured concrete driveways over them, because they said, well, you told us you'd never have to read it again. So you go, well, where is it? Well, it's under there, but you don't need to read it. And so now it's under a layer of concrete, and so it won't transmit, and it won't. So the public's perception was, I never have to worry about it. So it was like, oh my God, that was a bit. But anyway, they're clearly stupider in Renew area than
Well,
they are
at some stage they may have wanted to turn off the water so they could
Yes,
do something in there.
They might have, yes, yes. Anyway,
I don't think that
Awesome.
challenge is unique
No.
to Auckland. In some cases, just finding the meters here before we start a project
yes,
is one of the single biggest challenges.
I mean, I like
but
the,
the connection.
yes,
I like in the report the focus on the brownfield areas and, you know,
Yeah.
where you've got high amount, it's great. But you're going to learn more. And the reality is, we've done a pilot with a small number of properties. You're going to go up to 3,000 properties. It's sort of really still a pilot. There
It
will
is.
be things that come up. And all we're saying is we just need to be no surprises, any major alarm bells. But don't just come with problems, come with solutions. Because it's not going to be a linear path, is it? The reality is, this is going to be a bit bumpy. It's going to affect everyone in the city. It's going to be high profile, and we just need to be across it. So I would like, if we're agreeable, I'm happy to keep the recommendations as is, but if in the light of phase one, you could come back with a more deep, so that we're across the steps in fit and have some milestones and all of that, just a bit. Are you
agreed,
comfortable with that?
100%, Chief.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So I think we've got unanimous support for a very big decision. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Well done. Thank you.
Good email comments on that. One of the 5 names saving. I think that's the start of conversation.
Yeah.
Really.
And now we've got another small item, Phuket wastewater treatment plants. So thank you, Alistair. And
We're on public.
Still public.
Yes.
Just checking.
yeah.
We'll
So-
move it. Exclude it later.
So Peter, do you want to say any words, or
I'll just pass to Andrew.
Andrew and then Alistair?
Thank you to the board. I just want to acknowledge the transformational approach that Alistair Gray's brought to pulling together a ragtag bundle of projects that's out in an LTP into a program of works. I think the board's previously signalled the overall value of the program. This report seeks to formally break that up into a number of tranches where decisions can be made quite separately over the course of a 15-year term. And those decisions could be made in some cases in future years in response to actual growth seen within the catchment and actual performance of the plant in relation to any new consent conditions. So with that in mind, the approval sought today is to proceed with tranche 1. I call it a hydraulic tranche. That's about getting the flow in the gate of the plant and treated initially with grit removal, etc. To do that, we do need to design some of the future tranches, because you need to have confidence that the whole site as a whole will work. So we do need to do some design thinking on tranches 2, 3, and 4, but the request is only to move tranche 1 into physical works at the end of the design phase. Separately to that, just foreshadowing that we will be coming back with tranche 2, which is the buildings phase. What's behind that is relocating existing buildings, it's the control room building and maintenance buildings, outside of the fence, because inside the fence is the valuable land designated for treatment process.
That makes sense.
And those buildings are not fit for purpose from a number of considerations, including utilisation, or ability to utilise seismic performance, etc. This approval is to allow us to do some deeper dive investigations into the future building requirements for EOI and come back to the board for scope decisions on buildings in the next 12 to 18 months before we move buildings into any form of construction activity. So I'm happy to pause there and take questions.
Can I just say,
sorry,
Do you want to clarify, the maintenance building may be inside the fence, and that would be more convenient for staff
the
to be able
office and
to
lab
function. And one of the reasons for only seeking the investigation is that the land outside the fence is different land outside the fence, and will need different statutory approvals that will end up going through the consent work stream.
It's reserved land.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Could I just say, massively complex project. I like the way you've broken it down to make it into bite-sized chunks. Each one of them are huge. And I like there's a logical sequence to that program. It's a 15-year thing. We've got some numbers in there. This is going to change and evolve with time. And again, for me, one of the issues is the governance side. It doesn't say that I'm aware, because we've done a visit, we've talked to Gary MacDonald. I know there's a process within there, but again, it's such a big project. The reality is the number will be bigger probably on each of the tranches. And I think managing the public expectations, that's going to be important. And I think it's helpful for us to be clear. And I think it lends itself to a framework for governance here for the board's involvement because of the way you've structured it. So it would seem an easy thing to me just to build in a program about when we touch base, and obviously approving each tranche is part of it, and just being explicit about that. But it's more than management of expectations here, Peter. This will probably overspend, is the truth of it, and because it's such a complicated project and it's over such a long time frame, and new things will come up during that period, and people go back to the original 640 million or whatever the figure is, and it'll probably be very, very different. And I think we need there's a sort of comms and management of expectations around that I think we just need to get right. But I thought it's a good report with sensible thinking here, and well done. Tim and Dave, any?
I was just interested in just a query. I'm been a representative on the program governance group. Is that been confirmed?
So
the person.
So alongside this, and not covered in the report, is the reconsenting project. And that has a very significant establishment, and we have had one full day walk over, lift the lid, walk around the site, and thoroughly engaged representatives from a large number of people, and like a representatives as well. So that group will absolutely sit alongside the physical part of the project.
And I see there's I've been a representative on the governance group as well.
We haven't got that name yet, but the intention is yes.
So currently the town defender engagement is being led by the consents work stream. It's only recently sorted there's a space for town defender representation on the program governance group. There are two representatives from the Kaitiaki Roku that are named for the technical advisory group, so they'll be part of that process. And from a technical sense, or governance sense, it's starting to join together.
Thank you. Earlier discussion, it is our only Hamilton wastewater treatment plant, and changing a plane where you're flying it is very difficult. So, changing a wastewater treatment plant while you're still treating all of the wastewater from Hamilton without exception and zero spillages is a massive challenge. So I really like the staging, the phasing and the phasing cost. Are just building slightly on the chair's points, because phasing of the cost means too, we don't have to ask everyone to pay for it all now and carry the debt on their balance sheet. So I think there's definitely a pricing benefit and revenue for our residents and commercial. The only other thing, and again, it's building a little bit on the chair, and we're having a bit of a chuckle first thing about the cost of the Wellington Town Hall, where it started off at 43 million and it's like 300 and something. But if you were never going to do it for 43 million, is it a blowout or was that just a first number? So on that, in your paper, you talk about the P95 at just short of $1 billion, 979.6, and the difference between the P50 at 675. Well, to me, if we go over $1 billion, it's not a cost blowout. That was, but if you're having to align your budget with your water service strategy number and how that is, then you're sort of stuck by that. So just encourage us to make sure that, that actually at the P50, that actually indicates that half the projects will cost more than that. And if this is one of them, that isn't a failure. So, I wouldn't want people to be thinking, well, that, to my money, it is much more. This is $1 billion project. And I think the numbers are says inflated, hence the chair's comments about governance, etc. It's a $1 billion project. To me, it's not a blowout. And then finally, your recommendation C says that you're asking for, and it says an estimated cost, and that it's not an absolute because it's at the P50. You won't actually know until you get tenders back, but of 182.3. So we approve that, and if it's more than that, you got to come back for another approval.
Yes.
Right. So blinding glimpse the obvious, get nodding heads. All good, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah.
But to me, if it goes more than that, it's not a blowout. You don't actually know what it's going to cost until you get your design and your plan, and you get the tenders in, and you go, are we going to do it or not?
And probably multiple times we revise the budget so that we're not in a situation where we keep going back to an original number on pretty limited data at that.
Correct. So once we get the tender, we go, that's the price without contingency. I mean, that's what the board should then hold people to, the time frame and the dollars, because that's when that's what we're going to do.
But there's a lot in there. So number one is just you're preaching to the converted. I'm highly aligned with your views. I guess just a reminder that because the Water Services One capital program was developed at pace, often late at night, for Puketi, it's largely been a lift and shift from what was in a 2024 LPP.
Exactly.
That is P50.
It's going to change.
So, and P50 means half the time you're over and half the time you're under. So, a lot of the commentary you've provided, Dave, absolutely resonates with me. Earlier on, though, you talked about the fact this is a live operational plant and alluded to the risks of undertaking major surgery on a live operational plant. It is an extreme risk. One of the approaches that we're recommending, you'd think this is a given, but it has not been a given in Hamilton or other centres, is what I'm referring to as N+1 redundancy, where N is what you need to deal with the operational needs of the plant, and +1s you have one extra. So before you take any part of the process offline for reconstruction or refurbishment or change, you actually focus on delivering the +1 first, so you maintain operational resilience
all the way through.
So that's at the very core of the design and construction approach. Now, would that be sufficient to mitigate any of the challenges? Don't know, but it's a step change in terms of our approach to a life. The other final comment is I was remiss in my opening simply to acknowledge the significant IP brought to this project by Sven Eriksson. He's on staff within IAWAI, and it's been just through his knowledge and understanding of the plant that you know we are able to construct this overall master plan and break this down to a tranche approach. So Steve's not here today. It's really wanted to acknowledge.
Yeah. That's great.
Cool. And Chair, finally, I'm very supportive of the procurement strategy as well.
Yeah.
From this.
For this.
Yes.
Yeah. Well done. Thank you. So I think we, with unanimous support, this is the last of the biggies, and we're now on to a series of smaller but still important topics. For us.
Is a lovely biggie for you and public excluded.
Yes, I have. Okay, excellent. So we are now into catching up a bit of time. Okay, on delegations again, Peter, do you want to say any?
Only by way of introduction to acknowledge the work that Becca and in particular Hannah has done on navigating us through these. Hannah joined us from Waikato District to rescue us from the process of reviewing policies and bylaws and other things, and from the 1st of July joins the team to replace Vishal as the person responsible for the next water services strategy. So she will become a very familiar face to you as we go forward and work our way through all of those issues.
Congratulations. Okay.
Cool. Good everyone. Thanks for the nice introduction, Peter. I will largely take these reports as read, but just give you a little bit of background information in terms of the breadth of what we've been working on. So the delegations policy doesn't just include financial delegations, as you will have seen, it includes all of the delegations right across from both WDC and HCC. So it's a very comprehensive document and provides a lot of information in there. We've liaised with multiple staff across both jurisdictions and been through legal review as well. There are the key changes around the delegations policy is, as Peter said, enabling us to be able to do things more efficiently in the context of being CCO. And the same with the procurement policy as well. So there's been some key changes different from the HCC policy, but largely based on the set out and the key principles of those policies. So Hannah, is there anything you want to add?
Yes, I just wanted to note that in the process that we've gone through to review this policy, we have ensured that all statutory delegations have been transferred from the existing WD staff and they are retained and transferred through as they move on to IAWAI. As Becky mentioned, there have been some changes to the DFAs, primarily to increase them at the exec level. There is an additional proposed change, which Natasha's not here, but there's just one additional proposed change to sorry, I thought you were sitting there. To just amend the policy, and so this change is was noted by Kristen, and this change is to reflect a potential issue within the IAWAI Constitution Agreement, which requires all properly related transactions to be signed off by 2 directors and a solicitor. So we just want to get that delegated to the staff level to be able.
Okay.
So I circulated that round to the board via email yesterday.
You do. I mean, it seems that if you stand back from this is about getting stuff done, isn't it? And we've got a big agenda. And I think the basic principle is when we sign off the WSS and budget, we're effectively handing it over to the management. And it's just, we've had a couple of examples today where we said that's fine, but we want some milestones because they go, and I think it's a two-way thing. I think that's helpful on big challenging issues that are going to be in the public limelight where, you know, we're going to get some flack and all that sort of stuff, and you need the board support going forward. It works both ways, and it's also about governance. So I think we do that on a, you know, on its merits sort of basis, as we did with Becky and water meters, etc. Is there anything in the delegations around, given that there's a budget for a capital project, 50 million or whatever, and there's an overspend, when does it come back to the board? Is it a percentage of overspend or what?
There is a delegation. Peter has a delegation to spend up to 5 million
Yeah.
for unbudgeted expenditure.
Yeah.
And there is also a delegation for Peter and Andrew around managing the renewals and compliance program within a sort of 3-year window, which
I'm just wondering whether in that context is whether it's worth having something around, because 5 million on Phuket is nothing, but on a small project could be huge. Is it worth having something of a percentage, if you like, or is that just too bureaucratic? I don't know. It's just transparency around.
And I think it's protection for the executive.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's bureaucratic. I think that it's a dollar and or a percentage. So if the dollar
10% or something is what I've seen in previous.
That's what I had as well at 10%.
Yeah.
And then there was also the override of no surprises.
Yeah, so we should know.
No, or this is inside, but actually someone needs to know.
Yeah, but I mean, Peter and I discussed this. I think this is about enabling the organisation to get on and do stuff. We've got a challenging club. We do not want to tie it down in terms of bureaucracy.
Yes.
We want to be clear on direction. There are some things where we can agree milestones on it as its merits basis. But I just think we probably do need something for transparency and know where any major overspends are.
I think 10% on the capital on a capital.
Would that make sense?
A project.
So, if in essence what you're saying is 10% on a project, or
5 million,
but no more than 5 million.
Yeah.
I was used to the other way.
Okay.
5 million if it's more than, like if you've got a contract and you can anyway, I'm not sure. Maybe the team should think about it.
Yeah. Come back.
How it works.
We'll come back.
Can I suggest, Mr. Chair, that you adopt this as it is?
Yes.
With the amendment about
yes, I hear that.
And we'll go away and have a think about how we might, because we can tweak this.
We can tweak it at in a minute
at any time as we go. So
if we pick it up in the next board meeting's minutes, come back and look at it, how it might work.
There is provision in the policy, or the requirement in the policy for any overspends to be reported back to the board. So there is something, a decision that's made where it's gone out of budget, there's a requirement to be reported back to the board. The only concern I would have around the percentage amount is because we've got such huge projects, the impact of a 10% overspend on the financial strategy could be quite significant.
Yeah.
So that would be my only concern around that.
Everything to add to that too as well is that we'll be measuring things out portfolio and then it's a whole capital program as well.
Yeah.
So as long as we're within that capital envelope on an annual bucket basis.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
And I think if you've got transparent reporting around that,
yeah,
and it's underspend by the way as well as overspend. Yeah.
So I think there's a balance and a rationale, the behaviour that I'd hate for people to go as, oh, we better pad the number that goes to the board, so that we never have to come back. Like that's not success either, because it just sucks up OPEX or capital from some other opportunity. So there's like
everyone gets a new desk at the end of the
it's just sort of a reality sort of check, right? If the project is buying 10 computers, it's like it's a little bit over, does the board need to know that? Oh, but like if it's over budget, then theoretically you should. So anyway,
look, I think I'm comfortable with what Peter's recommended. Let's just look at it and see whether we can amend that and we can pick it up next.
So one thing just to add, so have very comfortable with that. Sorry, is in the event, and I couldn't see it in the docket, in the event of a natural disaster. So where things have to move very rapidly, and you might actually have to approve an expenditure of more than 5 million, and you may not be able to get hold of the board.
So to
protect life and actually protect assets.
The framework that is in the delegation policy itself is from memory an unlimited delegation in the event of a natural disaster that's a declared civil defence emergency.
Well, that's great because I certainly think some of the ones in recent years didn't necessarily cover that, and then people were in breach of their
So probably,
delegation.
probably the piece that we
Okay.
need to think about that needs to go with that is our access to cash in the event of a declared civil defence emergency to deal with what we might need to do.
Okay.
Well, in a way that,
Depending on the day, we can get the money as long as we request it for 11 a.m.
I mean, have you looked at, Nathan, the IAWAI thing? They've effectively got a sort of reserve there, haven't they, from the councils that in the event of an emergency they could draw down on. I'm not saying we should try and do that here. We've got our own headroom, but it's very common. I'm involved in the housing board in the UK, and they've got a number of facilities. So it's an area we could maybe look at. Going, it's not first order issue, but it is something we could look at, where you have a facility with a bank to draw on if you need to, and you pay for that.
But
That's your favourite best.
the key thing straight up is in the event of a civil defence emergency, if something has gone pear shaped, we will need to move very quickly.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll stop. I think if we establish an audit risk committee working through this type of thing in detail is also topics for audit risk to then bring into the blinding ones to be obvious rather than
sounds like a statement from a dream, but it's not going to be obvious.
you never know how lucky you get. You never know how lucky you get, Peter. Not necessarily true.
All right. So I take it that we've got unanimous support for the delegation policy, which then takes us to the procurement policy.
Yes.
Yeah, so obviously really topical for the board is procurement policy. So we have made a number of changes. It's quite different to the Hamilton City Council policy. The changes have been made to support timely and efficient financial decision making and within budget and adherence with the IAWAI policy. The proposed policy enables executive level staff to approve high value expenditure and contracts to enable efficient delivery of IAWAI's substantial capital works program. Yeah, that's pretty much the key. So there's been quite a few changes to enable the executive team to have a much stronger hold around making approvals around contracts. But we're still trying to maintain assurance and quality as part of that as well, to make sure that it was, from a public perspective and from a transparency perspective, that we're doing all the things that we need to do.
So just perhaps if I could raise a question, Becca, and it's sort of directed at you, but also Andrew, based on recent experiences, and I'm aware this is obviously a public report. At times, operating Hamilton's procurement policy and engaging their procurement service has been challenging. Do we have the flexibility to, and I know we've got a shared service agreement, this is probably one of the few areas I was most exercised about when I was before, Peter arrived. But it was quite a rigid approach. And is it a monopoly service? Are we able, where we think they're not the right people to do the service, to go out and get? Because I think that's important. Certainly been painful on some topics where it's gotten away, frankly. So I'd just be interested in where we are there.
So my answer to that, and if you can fill in any of the gaps, but it is a shared service, but it's a shared service where one of the roles in Nathan's team will be our procurement specialist, so that will be an in-house resource that we're recruiting for. Second thing that we've made very clear in creating the shared service is that in all respects, IAWAI is the business owner and the business decision maker about all matters procurement. So the shared service is how you facilitate the process. They have no role in decision making.
Yeah.
And then the next step beyond that is this is one of the areas where we need to suck it and see and take a view as to whether we need to go beyond one and think about how we build out our own procurement capability. So that we'll step our way through that.
So I'm happy with that. You can see where it didn't feel that responsive, if I'm being honest about it, and it felt like they were the decision maker and we had to suck it up. I'm just being completely straight on that.
Yeah.
And if we've addressed that, I just want to keep it under review, because if it's not working, I'd rather exit, frankly.
Absolutely. We have done quite a bit of work with the parent team. We've actually developed a set of guidelines as well to support that expectation around the decision maker and the administrator of the service, essentially. And we have put an escalation pathways as part of that, and very clear roles and responsibilities. So we've had a couple of good meetings with the procurement team. I think they are coming on board, but agree with you, we'll need to continue to monitor that. And obviously Andrew would be key in providing that feedback as well, as huge user.
Well, we've had some positive, and we've had some examples where we've gone elsewhere, haven't we? And we've also had some pain. Just being clear on it. Yeah, as long as we're learning from that, and if we're the decision maker, that's the key. But we need responsive service, don't we?
If I might just highlight one other issue, in terms of the key changes. What's listed under paragraph 4E is a new requirement to monitor repeated low-value purchase orders to the same supplier.
Yes.
Now, that what's become quite obvious is there's a whole lot of that, and we need to move away from that into real contracts with service. The threshold that we've set at $75,000 a year is probably going to be too low. In terms of how we manage the.
So we might need to adjust that in the life experience.
Well, we might need to adjust it straight off. So,
what should it be then?
That I don't know. The issue really surfaced yesterday as to does it need to be higher?
I mean, things something like 450,000 at first, and then we can tear it down over time.
Yeah, I think it's just about a transition, because we know that we need to get to that point, but we've just got a lot of work to get through to achieve that.
Okay.
So can I ask who's the users of that stuff?
So that would be people in my team.
And
so it's like maintenance activities, it's low level operational and maintenance activities that accumulate
over time by having policy, and it wasn't nearly, I can't remember, it was 450. I can't remember the value, but it came out there was perhaps some inappropriateness of bringing people and saying, can you come and do this work for us? And it looked like a few $1,000s, but they did it like 100 times. And then you go, actually, the person phoning up has a relationship with the person who's coming to do the work.
Yeah.
And it was low level, each of them, but it happened so often. He looked at the total value and made sure that's really appropriate. So, my gut feel is 450 is way too high for the combination before you want to go, why are we doing this? Why don't we have a contract for service for these things? We can just run people up with this. Someone just mowing lawns and it's,
I don't think we should decide the number here now, because it's up on.
I'm more than happy to go with the 75, and then, you got a monthly meeting. If it's no good, you bring it back.
But my sense is it will need to be higher than 75 for the first year.
Because of the practicalities.
The practicality of moving away from where we are to contracts for service. And I suggest that you delegate the decision of the final number to the chairman and myself.
Yeah.
And we can do that in the next day. Once we've done a bit further work around what that number needs to be to balance the tension of moving it in the direction we want with the practicalities.
And is it in addition to that, is this not an area that audit and risk should track?
Yes.
Because there's going to need to be probably this number probably might end up at 75k actually over a period of years.
It is just a transition.
So we'll proceed on that basis, that you guys will have a discussion and see what a pragmatic number is. We know it will go lower over time. You'll get audit and risk to track that as an issue, and we'll sign off with Peter and myself. Okay.
And just have one question, Chair, which I am fully on board with it. I couldn't see it in there. When do we publicly list the contracts?
They publicly get listed as part of the procurement process. I don't think it's covered in the actual policy, but we can add something to that effect if you would.
So up north of any contract over $1 million.
Yeah,
was on the website.
Yes.
So no one really looked at it, but it was really useful on a couple of occasions when there were journalist inquiries. They go, "Oh, you've made this decision and no one's aware of it." You go, "It's on our website." And they go, "Oh,
So at the
okay."
moment, everything goes up on the Hamilton City Council website from a Hamilton City Council perspective. And I think it's 4 contracts out, direct appointments will go up there to be advertised and to be put in the register as well.
So I just would encourage thinking about, is it all or is it above a certain level, the materiality of that. So, but
Would you mind pointing out that other change that was mentioned yesterday afternoon around the quotes?
Yep. So there's one other change there. We just wanted to make it a minor one, but probably big in the scheme of things as well. So where we are asking, we're suggesting we need 3 quotes for a direct appointment or the level above that. We're just saying 3 quotes requested, but we might not actually get 3 quotes back. So we might go out and request 15 quotes and we only get 2 back. So we're just changing that if that's okay with the board.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things I was just thinking about actually when I read the report. We are moving into a sort of, there's going to be a shortage of bidders. And the reality, it's going to be price taking and all. So that I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And therefore we do need it.
So we do need the mechanism and it needs to work. At the same time, I think it's important that we maintain the expectation that we should be seeking competitive tension and all that.
Price.
This one was probably triggered by me. We were weaving out and requested 12 quotes very recently. Only 2 wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one, isn't it? That's the real world we're moving into, isn't it? Yeah. Good report. Thank you, and reassuring in terms of how you responded. Treasury management policy.
thank you.
Well, we've gone through it already before. I've done the change from Dave.
Was this the PwC?
Yep. Yep, so effectively it's the same policy. We've already started to work on the report, already in the detailed cash flow forecasting, and this is almost just to.
Are there any issues anyone wants to raise? No. So I think we agree that. And then you've got Gavin. You might want to come up, Gavin. I'm assuming this is quite an important moment, really. The last of its kind.
Well, I hope so. You must be a standing ovation. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. So I just want to first of all start by just reflecting on, because it's really been a year since the decision was made to go live.
Right.
And in fact, nearly a year to the date, the appointment of the board members. And I think we need to remember that because such considerable amount of progress has been made in that time. We have covered a lot of territory. We've been at the forefront of things that are happening with the legislation. I know Peter has provided advice before around we've looked at a local bill as something that we should look to help to progress things. That's effectively been put on hold, but in a state where it could be picked up, it could be picked up quickly if the DIA don't decide to pursue the matters that we raised around reserve land. So we have really been, IAWAI has really been pushing the boundaries in terms of formation of a water organisation. So I just wanted to start there. I think if we go back to the things that we set out to achieve, it was obviously to make sure there was a safe transition to the 1st of July, to make sure that AWA was at the basis, at the centre of everything that was being done, that we were targeting affordability and also addressing the understatement or the underinvestment in previous years. And I think all those things have been addressed by the board. So I think that's really good progress. I guess where we are now is we can reflect on things like all the staff that were offered roles in EY have accepted 100%. I don't think many organisations would experience that situation. And I think within the first week it was not over 90%. So I think that again was a reflection of the journey that the staff in both councils and also at Watercare have also been taken on as well. So I think that's a good step forward. The other roles that have been and were advertised, a number of those have been filled as well. Again, some from internally, some externally. But again, there's been good interest, and I think there will continue to be with the remaining roles that need to be filled. In terms of the other things we've been focusing on, it's fine to have the staff, but you've got to make sure you can pay them as well. So that's been a really high priority for us. There's been a few ups and downs as we've gone through that process, but certainly I'm absolutely confident 100% that all the staff will be able to be paid. So I'm confident that that's going to happen. So we've pretty much dealt with all the things that need to be adjusted. There's some final tests being done this week, but there is a backup plan as well that will be implemented immediately if we had to fall back on that. In terms of other things, I hope I'm not speaking ahead of what's happened, but obviously LGFA documentation, a lot of work gone on in that space as well. And again, I just want to reflect that the efforts that have gone in to make that happen. There's been a couple of days ago, I thought there was no chance that that documentation would all be available to you, but not entirely sure if 100% of it is, but if not, I think 95% of it is. So I think that's another case where we've worked really hard to make sure things happen. Digital systems, so you've talked about the shared services arrangements that need to be in place, digital systems, particularly the billing systems, and being able to do development contributions and all those other things that you need to have in place. They're predominantly in place now. We had 44 different systems that had to be investigated and changes had to be made to, and we had to also check with vendors about our ability to use them for EY's purposes. That's all been done. In terms of the assets, there's no issues with transferring all the assets on the 1st of July. In terms of contracts, we're progressing. There's still work to do in that space, but we have certainly, I think we have 135 contracts still to go, but a lot of them are packaged up. So I'm not sure we'll make all of them by 1 July. But certainly we'll have arrangements in place that will enable EY to conduct its business. The land that's scheduled to be transferred before the 1st of July or on the 1st of July is all in hand. We already know that there'll be a significant chunk of land and reserve land and things like that will take a lot longer, but there will be certainly arrangements in place to make sure that EY can use that land and can perform its functions. I think I've covered all that. So if I was to sum things up, when people turn the tap on, the water's going to flow. When they flush the toilet, that's going to work. When they have trade waste matters, they'll all be dealt with. When people go in to pay their bills, or get invoiced, that will happen. It's some of the behind the scenes things that still need to happen after 1 July, and that's, for example, things like reporting. So on the 1st of July, if you said, give me a report on the financial state of EY, you may not be able to get it, but you will certainly have it by the time you need it. So there's still some work to do there, but I'm confident that it's all happening. And it's all on track to make sure that there won't be any restrictions on what EY does. Finally, I wanted to sort of just deal with, we set out with a budget. We had a budget of roughly 7.4 million on the establishment side, 3.95 million on the operational side. Both will be underspent. The establishment budget itself will be underspent, we think, around about by close to $3 million. And I just want to stress that I'll give you some reasons why that's happened, but I also want to just stress that that's not because we stopped doing things or have put things aside and left them. We have undertaken, I'm going to say 99% of the things that we set out to do. And the other 1% is something that we worked out we didn't need to do. So the main reasons why we're so far on budget, three main reasons. First of all, because we utilised internal staff in a number of cases rather than engage external contractors. And that was a combination. Sometimes it was a forced thing that we actually couldn't find external contractors, so I had to use internal resourcing to do that. And I have to say that's had some consequences in the sense of putting a lot of pressure on staff who are often doing two jobs, and there's more than one person in that category, but we've got there. The second thing was the digital costs were significantly forecast to be significantly higher than that has proven to be the case. I can't really give you much more indication than that. And then the last comment was that we also had a 10% contingency in our budget, which really only a very small part has been needed. So those are really the main reasons why we're so significantly under budget. Mr. Chair, that's really my report, and you're happy to take any questions.
Well, perhaps if I could say a few words. Earlier when we did Peter's report, we basically did a recap and you covered some of the same ground, but really to show our appreciation to everyone involved and what a fantastic year it's been, really. And so well done to you. I think at this point it's probably worth, I love the saying, well done is better than well said. And I think this is a good example of that. And probably pay tribute to you, Gavin and Natasha, and the other members of the council teams, and Peter in his earlier role, in the work that you've done, because you've been at the centre of that, because this has been a team effort. There's obviously been work in EY, but it's been work in all councils as well. To pay tribute to all of the staff across the two councils that have leaned in, because it wouldn't have happened without that working very well, and I think in the main it has worked extremely well. And actually to pay tribute to our shareholders, and I mean, we've had unanimous support on some difficult topics, which is, and in part that's because of the work you and the wider team have done. So I think it's been a momentous year, and it put some good foundations in place to progress. So well done to everyone.
Mr. Chair, just on that, I think the foundations were sowed the year before, in the sense that, as I remember the first meeting we had, Peter, when we were talking about can we work together, and it was really, and Natasha was there as well, of course, and it was really sitting there as two different groups of council staff talking about how do we go. I think it took us probably one meeting before we said forget all that. We're working as one team, and just go forward from there. Yeah. I think the other thing as well, I think it's good for EY in terms of how it's all worked out. But I think the teamwork that's gone on behind the scenes, the work that's been done across both councils, I think is good from a local government perspective as well, bearing in mind the likely future will be amalgamations and things, and I think it's really enabled certainly Hamilton City and Waikato District Council to work together pretty seamlessly. So so
And you were there when the last attempt was made. You would have been in your role at Waikato District, which was painful, and you were there as well, weren't you? And you were there, Andrew. So being here before and actually this one we've got all the women, it's absolutely massive.
wasn't our fault either.
Can I also say, Mr. Chair, from Gavin's perspective, this is probably a combination of effort beyond 2012, but 2012 to this point. So actually kind of fitting in for Gavin to see what he's
Comes to fruition.
Come to be.
That's why I'm here. I wouldn't have stayed on to do anything else.
Dave, then Tim, anything you want to add?
Well, I've learned today that Peter likes to sing.
He does.
There's no judgment on the quality of singing, although maybe that command was quite poor. But anyway, singing, and we know the chair likes to talk, so I like saying, so I'd say that effort without result is just tiredness. But the effort you've put in, the result you've achieved is outstanding. So thank you so much. So, and we fully endorse everything that the chair said, because a lot of people work hard, but if you don't achieve anything, we are as tired. And what's been achieved is first class. So thank you very much.
We've given one for Gavin, thanks for your work. We go way back.
We do.
And a lot of people probably won't know, but myself and Gavin has been on the Waikato Regional Water Safety Board for a few years now. So when I look at Gavin and the work that he's been doing in terms of making sure wastewater water supply infrastructure is working, not just inside the pipes, I guess, getting things influential, but also on the water as well, keeping our community safe. So thanks, Gavin.
I mean, it does remind me of a funny story which we talked to the shareholders about pre-Christmas, I think it was, on the water services strategy. And it's the Monty Python's Life of Brian. And there's a funny scene in this where the Pharisees are arguing over the Roman legacy, and Reg, who was the leader of the People's Front for Judea, he says, well, what, the Romans haven't done for us? And it starts as a heated argument, but it becomes a long list of achievements, you know, the forum, the roads, etc. And most importantly, finally, the aqueduct carries the drinking water. And for me, that was all about results, delivery, and outcomes, isn't it? And I think that's the exciting thing. We've now laid the foundations to do that, and we've seen today a whole lot of things that are going to start moving there. They're going to be bumpy all the way through, but you know, a really big well done. I think it's worked extremely well, and a lot of work to do still, and it never ends, does it?
No.
Thank you, Cameron.
Mr. Chairman, if I might just say a couple of things on the people front, which I didn't note earlier. Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, we started the process of engaging with the broader leadership team across IAWAI. So we've spent several hours together in 2 different sessions, and the excitement in the room you could feel and taste. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And equally, one of my messages to them was, we need to be real. Yeah, we've done an amazing job, but there are things that we will realise we haven't thought about and haven't fixed. There'll be some things that we think are fixed but aren't, and we discover that, and we're just going to have to work our way through that as we take the next steps. So I suppose the feet on the ground, keeping our feet on the ground piece is to just recognise we've done a bare minimum. Yeah, we haven't done a whole bunch of bells and whistles, and that's just real. But having done the bare minimum in the time that we have had with the amount of resource that we was now maintained is a big achievement. Yeah.
Yeah. And it builds confidence, doesn't it, to do the bigger things.
Yeah. And then if I highlight some other things, the relationship with Waikato Tainui is, in my view, unparalleled in terms of what you could expect from an organisation that's come out of local government in its formation. And the fact that our welcoming pōwhiri for all of the staff will be at IAWAI, I think just as a visible example of the nature of that relationship and the efforts that both the tribe and IAWAI is making to ensure that this is a three-way partnership and that is real. And then the last comment I'd make is, I think the welcome on the 1st is going to be quite amazing. It will be one of the few opportunities where we can actually assemble the whole team in one place at one time, other than the small number of staff that we'll need to make sure that everything keeps going. Not only is it hopefully we will spend the afternoon doing things like the understanding of where the name comes from and what it means, what is Te Ture Whaimana and what is our connection to it. We'll take the next step in feeding back our reflection on the values for the organisation and how we lock those down and turn those into expected behaviours, and a few other activities designed to help build that sense of team and unity going. So, really looking